is going to have to make that decision whether to keep going or stop, hit those spike strips
Okay,
right there. That
you
officer.
Yep, there it is. But he's going so slow.
okay.
Over him.
That looks like a good hit to me.
Yep.
For sure. Now, those spike strips, ideally, there's a speed that LAPD wants these spike strips to be used at very slow speeds. They may not operate as well as very high speeds, but that looked like a pretty good hit to me, at least on several of those tires.
Yeah, the front too, it looked like, and even in the back, because he rolled over it, and it looked like at least one of the rear tires actually went over it as well. So it does, in fact, take time, though, for those strips to actually cause all of the air to go out of those tires. It takes a little bit of time, but slowly and surely they will be deflated.
And how many pursuits have we seen, Amy and Mark, where they, hit these spike strips and then they keep on going for miles and miles and then they just don't stop? So hopefully this isn't the case and this person pulls over. But if they stay on Mulholland like this, this is a best case scenario. It's a Friday afternoon or Friday morning. A lot of people, have the day off or working from home or going on their lunch break. So you definitely want to be careful of that. But watching this pursuit go on, this is definitely one of the slower ones that we've seen.
Which, of course, is better than someone flying through these narrow, windy roads. So that's a good thing. But once they reach the end of this roadway, we definitely know there's another spike strip right there.
Yeah, we are seeing the great work for the crew in Skycal with that amazing camera we have. Very clearly, we're seeing the driver's side front tire is fully deflated, and we also see some of that damage. Did you both notice the damage to the front of that car? That's clearly a dent there in the front of this truck, and so that could be as a result of that hit and run that happened a little earlier. But second spike strip now on these tires here, and we're seeing little bits of that tire tread now coming off. So these tires are going to start shredding here, and this driver's not going to have a lot of options when he has his tires completely deflated.
Exactly. That is a larger truck, heavy weight, and so it will certainly wear out those tires quicker than, say, maybe a smaller car, and they will be on those rims before long, and trying to maneuver a windy road on rims could be very difficult.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder. It looks like this person's pulling to the right. Obviously, their tires are deflating. They're on the axle, the rim right there, so the car's pulling, the truck's pulling to the right. But, we're talking about this person, a suspect, a hit-and-run suspect. Okay, they're stopping right now. That's some pretty bad damage to the front end of that truck, because you think about it, it must have hit something pretty hard to see that.
Exactly, but now we have some traffic there. Those cars are stopped as this truck is trying to get by, which, is a good thing that the other drivers are, sitting there and not trying to get around this area, which, could certainly pose a danger for everyone involved. But we're just watching as this driver just continues to move along slowly still,
it's
it is much more difficult with those tires flattened.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now I think we are seeing both front tires deflated here. And Chris, you had mentioned before, we have seen pursuits with tires that have been deflated, and you mentioned they keep going and going. Well, this is certainly a truck that has a tremendous amount of horsepower behind it. Full-size Toyota Tacoma. These are vehicles that are designed for a lot of heavy-duty work, so there's a lot of horsepower. And the transmission, while it is under an incredible amount of stress when it has the front tires deflated, it is going to keep putting out that horsepower. And it didn't look like the rear tires were deflated, so there's still going to be probably a lot of force behind this vehicle. Certainly the control that this driver has over this full-size pickup truck is vastly degraded, which is, of course, an issue on a road where it's very tight turns sometimes, these turns, and very narrow corridors with cars on the other side. So certainly LAPD is concerned about how this driver is going to be able to keep controlling this truck, although if he remains at these lower speeds, it's not too much of a problem.
Yeah, the front hood is shaking, and it looks like it's trying to open up, but the truck keeps veering to the right, and it keeps going along. And, for all these people who are driving on the road, probably wondering what the heck is going on. But if you do see this, obviously stay inside, because you never know, if this person's dangerous, if they have a gun, or, what harm they could do. But, I mean, they're probably going 3-5 miles an hour?
Yeah,
this is pretty slow speeds right now, and it's unclear if that's because the driver is just not confident in the control that they have here, or if there's something else going on. I want to also mention we don't have any information about this driver being armed either. And so we are also hearing LAPD officers are discussing, the lead officer is discussing with the commander of this whether or not they're going to do a pit maneuver And that may be what we're seeing right here.
It. That's it. But when it's so slow, it's hard to make that happen when the vehicle's
pit
going
maneuvers
so slow.
Ideally are supposed to be performed around, I believe, 25 to 35 miles an hour. This is pretty slow.
Okay, there we go. They got it. Oh, no.
Okay.
Just when you think.
Yeah, it really needs to be going faster than this to do a successful pit maneuver, but they've definitely caused more damage to this truck, which is making it harder for this driver to continue on, but they are refusing to stop. Look at those tires just wobbling.
Reminds me of that game Twisted Metal from back in the day where the vehicles just keep going after getting all banged up.
That's exactly right. I love that video game reference, Chris. I got that one. But let me tell you, the fact that there has been a pit maneuver that was successful enough to make contact and turn this vehicle, and the driver is continuing to drive, did not surrender. This is going to change some of the psychology involved that LAPD officers are going to use to engage this driver. Clearly, this driver has shown the propensity to continue this pursuit even in the face of a dangerous situation like a pit maneuver. Now, most drivers, you would expect, if they feel that collision or they get turned around by an LAPD officer, many of those suspects surrender at that moment. But clearly, this driver has the wherewithal to keep going. And you can see
coming off.
We are going to lose all of the tread here, and this is where it may come to an end. There's really no place for this driver to go.
In the Hollywood Hills of all places, I mean, they are not stopping here. All right, let's see what happens, because the biggest question is who's inside this vehicle? And did they hurt anybody in this hit and run?
We
don't know.
We don't believe that there was any injuries in the hit and run. Again, LAPD called it a misdemeanor hit and run, which is so unfortunate because that usually would probably not be an arrestable offense. I would have to check on that. But because now this has turned into a pursuit, this is multiple felonies that this driver is now going to face and possibly extended jail time. And you can see this driver still trying to get away. Now, he has a hedge in front, he or she, I should say, has a hedge right in front of them, but it looks like they now have been boxed in completely. Now, there is a very dangerous choice that this driver has to make. Any attempt to reverse into these officers will automatically be considered assault on a police officer, which ratchets up this felony count immensely and also increases the danger for everyone involved. So LAPD is going to be watching that to make sure that this driver does not reverse, because that would be considered assault with deadly weapon, the deadly weapon being, of course, the truck.
Yes, and we're all waiting. At one time, Mark, when this driver first went over the curb, we saw a lot of those officers running up towards the side and then quickly began to back up behind that vehicle. But it does not look like this driver is ready to get out yet. We have not seen any movement from inside that cab.
Oh, look,
that's not good.
Trying to go.
Yeah, that is not good. This kind of a thing is what really ratchets up the danger here. Thankfully, it doesn't look like there's any real damage being done. There's not a forceful collision, but certainly that truck with a lot of horsepower is pushing back against that LAPD patrol SUV. They're both very heavy vehicles, but any continued use of this is very, very dangerous for everybody involved here.
Oh, yeah, and you can see them all with their guns drawn and ready to go. And well, I guess we'll have to wait and see if this person wants to go. But
look at the tires there.
A four-wheel drive truck. Was that
it looked like they had a less than lethal with a green on that rifle.
Good eye.
If it's green, that's a less than lethal beanbag round or perhaps pepper ball round. But
just
it's probably
went into the passenger
round.
window there.
So they could see what's going on.
Yeah. It was difficult. Well, no, the driver's still pushing down on that gas pedal there. So it's unclear if that beanbag round had any effect whatsoever. Now the air unit, you can see those are the blades of the LAPD air unit that's keeping an eye on this, the air commander up there. But boy, this is just so dangerous. And we're going to start seeing some smoke coming out of those back tires as the treads are starting to heat up. There is no motion, though, coming out. It's a second beanbag round now.
Yep.
And it's just one of those kind of situations where if this person is still trying to get out of this current situation, they can't be in the right mindset. I mean, are they on drugs? Are they on alcohol?
A desperate attempt.
You're not moving. Yeah.
A desperate attempt. And that's the problem with these pursuits. The people that are behind the wheel are desperate to get away, and they will do whatever it takes oftentimes to try to get away.
Yeah, years and years ago, we did a story here where we actually tracked down about 3 different drivers that had been involved in pursuits, incarcerated, and then released. And we talked to them. I remember the stories when I was new here at Skycal. That we asked them, why did you run? What made you think that running was a good idea? And universally, all 3 of them said, I just thought that I could get away. The road was in front of me, and I felt that I could escape if I just ran a little bit longer. So that was going through at least the 3 drivers that we interviewed more than a decade and a half ago for that story. But in this particular case, there is nothing in front of this driver that could possibly indicate to them that they would be able to get away. There's a hedge in the front, multiple LAPD units behind, and a disabled truck. So the psychology here is just to let this driver somehow come to the conclusion that they need to surrender. And certainly that beanbag round shows that the LAPD means business. They are certainly willing to use force to make sure that no one else is injured, no officers or civilians are injured here, and they don't want the driver injured either. The best case scenario is that that driver ends up in handcuffs, uninjured, and on their way to jail. But again, we're still seeing that rear tire try to reverse.
This person is still giving it the gas, trying to, at this point, you just wonder if they're just kind of toying with the officers because they know that they're not going anywhere, or if they are, like you mentioned, Chris, not in the right state of mind and just doing whatever it takes.
I mean, it has to
make
be
that
something,
attempt.
but obviously it's a waiting game right now. But we all know LA pursuits. We've covered so many of them. You don't usually see pursuits in the Hollywood Hills on a Friday morning at 10 o'clock like this.
On a road like this. This is a tough road, and so often there's a lot of traffic on these roads, and you're not going to get far. And we see this, is exactly that case. This driver didn't get too far and continues. I mean, look at that rear tire.
And a lot of people will bypass, other roads, and they'll go on Mulholland and go the side route just to get around. So if you're going to be driving in this area, you want to make sure that you know that this is going on, because that traffic is backing up, especially as we approach lunch hour.
Yeah, and I can also tell you,
the tire was going forward, and now it's going backwards again. It looked like there for a moment the tire was actually going forward.
Yeah, there are two bits of information here I want to tell you. Chris, you had mentioned this is Coldwater Canyon, and it is now closed in both directions, right around a small street. I believe it's called Potosi Avenue. So I'm looking at the largest major here would possibly, let's see, Halkirk. Yeah, it's closed. This is on the north side of the Hollywood Hills, so closer to Studio City. It's not over the crest yet, but Coldwater closed and likely will be for several hours, no matter how this shapes up here. And LAPD officers are discussing with the commanders in the air and back at headquarters regarding those wheels spinning. They say they are going in both directions, Amy. Great eye on that. He's reversing and going forward, but no real progress. But this is certainly making officers on the ground very nervous.
You have that sniper eye, Amy. I'm like, I need my glasses.
I think it's covering a lot of pursuits over the years and just really trying to pay attention to all the different things that are happening there. And I can't help but think about the people that live in those homes right in front of this.
Oh, they're trying to turn around.
And we're seeing people are turning around, trying to get away from this area because they're going to be stopped there for a while. We all know these officers will spend some time waiting these people out. And are you hearing something about the people that live there?
It's almost as if you read my mind, or you're actually hearing the scanner traffic on your own, because LAPD is literally discussing that very thing right now. This is now involving more divisions of the LAPD. While the officers here at the scene are from Hollywood Division, their colleagues at North Hollywood Division have now been called to assist because of that exact problem that you were mentioning, Amy. There are now drivers going the wrong way on Coldwater Canyon trying to get out of this mess, and there's an urgent need for traffic officers to A, get these civilians to safety, and B, make sure this does not just become a traffic nightmare through this entire Hollywood Hills area, which it probably already is considering what we're seeing here. But they need to get these cars out of here and safely back up and down Coldwater Canyon at this point, as this looks like it's going to be an extended standoff now with this driver.
Exactly, and this is not exactly the road that you want to be doing U-turns on your own without some, guidance there, because you just don't know who's going in front of you, behind you, and so it could be very dangerous for all the people just trying to get out of the area.
But also the fear of thinking like, hey, I could be stuck here for hours. I mean, yeah, it's definitely going to take a lot of work from them. But I'm curious, where this all started at. So we're saying that this is a hit-and-run suspect. We're saying that there was no injuries. Have we heard from authorities yet, Mark, where this actually started at and where this pursuit began?
Yes. So my great assignment editor out in the newsroom named Caden has been talking with the LAPD headquarters about this. And he says that Hollywood and Highland may be where this initial TC or traffic collision happened. And that's where we very likely see that damage at the front of the truck occurred. And LAPD described it as a misdemeanor hit and run. So not a felony hit and run. Probably not something the driver would ultimately be arrested for. It's possible. But certainly no injuries involved that LAPD knew of in that hit and run. But whoever remained behind, or perhaps witnesses, clearly identified the driver and vehicle involved in this hit and run. And it looks like LAPD, I heard them catch up with it somewhere around Laurel Canyon and Olympus. I did a check on the map. That's about 1.5 miles from Hollywood and Highland. So all LAPD Hollywood division officers responded very quickly and identified that silver Toyota pickup as the driver they were after. And as I mentioned before, they attempted to pull this driver over, and the driver did comply to begin with. But it was moments after that, I heard on the scanner, LAPD headquarters, all units and all frequencies stand by. Be advised, we are in pursuit of a hit and run suspect in a silver Toyota. So whatever this driver thought, he or she was not going to stop for the LAPD and took off. And now we're seeing just more of this mess. Wrong way, cars going back on Coldwater trying to get out of this, turning around. This is just awful for a Friday afternoon.
And this pursuit didn't go very far, I think, because he was going at such slow rates of speed that he didn't get too far.
But like 2-3
from
miles
the time
away?
that less than 2 miles, you said, Mark, about a 1.5 miles away from the initial scene. But we saw how slow he was going. We're showing our viewers now on the right side of your screen the spike strip that was put out. We actually saw this driver go over 2 different spike strips. We also saw an attempt to do a pit maneuver, but we often talk about the speeds that are necessary to have that successful pit maneuver. And this one did, in fact, stop that driver to some extent, but he was able to continue on, and we could see that truck rocking because those tires are just flattened up in the front.
Yeah, what we're seeing right now is, police right there trying to get this person to surrender, probably negotiating with the driver of this truck. And, a lot of the pursuits that we cover, when it does get to a standoff to this point, oftentimes the driver or the suspect is speaking to family, speaking to loved ones. They could be suffering some sort of episode where they're in fear for their life and, don't know what to do. So hopefully this is one of those pursuits that ends as peaceful as you can, at least from a human standpoint, and this person surrenders without it getting worse. But it definitely makes you wonder if this, what police are saying in this negotiations and if they're talking to loved ones.
And Mark, we saw that they used that less than lethal round there. There's that officer with that green colored rifle. It did break through the passenger window. And at this point, have you heard, is that driver the only person in the vehicle now that they fired that beanbag or whatever it is that they actually fired into that truck?
Yeah, so far they're under the impression that the driver is the only one in there. I don't have a description of that driver, gender, age, or clothing, but certainly the radio traffic is indicative that there's only one person in there. They're not discussing the need for perhaps to deal with more than one person, let's say, in this particular case. So that would also indicate perhaps why they felt that they could use a beanbag round, because they know they're not in danger of striking someone who perhaps is not really involved in this pursuit. The passenger, passengers is just that, a passenger. They're not, a lot of times, not responsible for what happens during this pursuit. We have certainly seen passengers that have been in pursuits not be arrested because they're either victims in some way or just not really a part of the crime that's happening in this particular case. But again, we're seeing with Skycal's excellent zoom camera what appears to be maybe some paperwork on the driver's side part of the dash, and perhaps a permit or a sticker of some kind on the other, but really no movement in the passenger side section of that Toyota Tacoma. But still, LAPD down there, the longer this goes, the higher the possibility we may see something like a SWAT team or a Bearcat show up. That may not be necessary, being that they aren't sure whether or not the driver is armed. They certainly haven't discussed anything about firearms in the vehicle or that telltale sign when the driver reaches underneath the seat. We haven't heard any discussion of that either. But certainly the driver agitated enough to be hitting that gas pedal. We haven't seen that, I guess, in a couple of minutes there. Perhaps this driver has given up on the possibility of using the very large engine in that truck to try and reverse his or her way out of this. And clearly they can't go forward either.
No, not at all. And as you were talking, Chris, about, oftentimes we'll see the driver on the phone, maybe talking to a family member. Maybe a family member has seen this, called that driver saying, give up, and we're continuing to watch this as we get a little bit of a tighter look inside that pickup truck. But because of the glare, it's really
It's
hard
hard
to
to
make
see,
out
yeah.
what is going on in that pickup truck.
But also, this is a good reminder for people, if you have any friends or family or plan to head towards this area, this Coldwater area, stay away because, like you said, this is going to be a traffic nightmare and a traffic mess, especially as we get into the noon hour. And oftentimes on Fridays, people go home early.
Exactly.
And a lot of people use this throwaway to get from one side to the other. So,
And not only is this impacting so many people that use Coldwater Canyon on a day like this, I'm just hearing now also on the scanners that one of the homes right here, I believe it's this home that the hedge belongs to right there, it's occupied. There's a woman in that home, and apparently she just came out and said, what's going on? Can I leave? And LAPD said, no, please go back into your home immediately and stay there. So even the homeowner here, unfortunately, has this unfolding in front of her in her own front yard. And she just said, I just want to get out of here. And LAPD said, this is not safe. Return to your home where it's safest, which is what I think they would like everybody in this neighborhood to do, is to remain in their homes. You can see there's LAPD officers there with ballistic shields, another beanbag shotgun. You see right there, that officer at the ready, along with that ballistic shield that they've got. It's capable of stopping any sort of firearm attack from that direction. But we're just seeing LAPD surrounding this driver and asking him repeatedly to get out. You can certainly understand that there are commands being shouted to this driver, and so far, no compliance at all.
No, and you have to imagine that it's at least those 3 homes there. This one clearly in the center, and probably the 2 on either side of this home, where all of those people that would be inside would be told to stay inside until this situation is cleared up. But it could be hours from now if, in fact, this driver just continues to refuse to get out. Officers oftentimes will wait it out as long as they need to have it in peacefully. But,
and
you know, it could be a mess for a while.
It could be a mess. So if you're just watching this right now, if we could actually get video of the pursuit happening to show you just how slow this truck was going. You know, police deployed several spike strips. I believe we at least saw 1 round. It hit him, but this was not a high-speed pursuit at all. It was a slow-speed pursuit, but it was the perfect situation because there wasn't a lot of traffic on the road. And then you're able to get LAPD officers on both sides of Coldwater Canyon to make that impact happen. And you know, thankfully, it ended in this. But now we're just hoping that, you know, this person peacefully surrenders, whoever they may be. But it was one of those situations that you get the spike strips, and then that's how they slow down.
Exactly, and this did begin, we believe, at Hollywood and Highland. This truck was involved in some type of misdemeanor accident and then led officers on a pursuit. We want to remind everyone that you are watching KCAL News, the 10 at 10. We are watching this pursuit unfold here, and we are watching as the driver of this silver pickup truck, a Toyota Tacoma, that is pinned into this area between that shrub and with those cruisers right behind it. This person, again, involved in a misdemeanor hit and run, took off, was going at extremely slow speeds.
Yeah,
and,
so slow.
Yeah, officers tried to do a pit maneuver. That didn't work. They also used 2 spike strips. We're also showing you the traffic that is now being turned around on Coldwater.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it started out as pursuit. Now it's a standoff. So who knows how long this could be. But you've got all this traffic coming from both sides, trying to head into the valley and then trying to head onto the west side, and only to be met with more traffic. But you got authorities on both sides probably telling people, you know, to stay away. But they're going to need some traffic officers out here because there's, you know, it could be dangerous because these roads are very narrow,
one right there too.
and there's not a lot of room to do U-turns.
Yeah.
And if they're going to try to do that, it's going to take some patience, but also it could be dangerous.
Yeah, definitely, because some parts
There's
of this
the spike strip
roadway.
video.
Yeah, we're showing you there on the right side of your screen where this pursuit ended, right there at that hedge there. And you see at the beginning, it wasn't up against the hedge, but then they did kind of pin it in, and the driver went forward a bit. And then we saw the tires start to spin backwards. Clearly, this driver was trying to back into those cruisers, but had nowhere to go at this point.
Yeah, you could tell it's a pretty heavy truck, though, because even when they tried the pit maneuver twice, it barely moved.
Yeah,
You know,
it's hard when it's going really slow. They
Yeah.
the pit maneuvers are meant for a vehicle that's going a little faster,
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah, there's an optimal speed that LAPD likes to see. It's somewhere, I believe, around 35 miles an hour. I'm going to have to check my notes on that. Too slow, it's not effective. Too fast, it's wildly dangerous.
Exactly.
So they like to see it at about 25 to 35 miles an hour, and this may have been just below that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this headache that it's going to start causing for people in the Hollywood Hills area. We're getting information that southbound Coldwater is being closed. What they said is at the high school. That's got to be the Harvard Westlake High School. That's down near Ventura. So if you're heading south on Laurel Canyon, you're not going to get any further than about Van Noord Avenue, which is where Harvard Westlake is. They're turning people around there. Heading northbound, they're closing it at Mulholland, which is good because there's at least a way you can go east or west on Mulholland. So this is a section of Coldwater mostly closed on the northern side of the Hollywood Hills. Second bit of information that I want to talk about is LAPD Hollywood Division officers who are the ones that are down there at the scene. There are other officers out at Hollywood and Highland where this initial hit and run traffic collision happened, and they are speaking with the victim who remained behind, asking this victim what on earth happened with this hit and run. Trying to get more information about exactly how that went down and perhaps why this pickup truck driver is so intent on getting away, to see if there's any clues as to what is causing this driver to behave in this way. But at least that victim did stay behind here, I should say at Hollywood and Highland, to speak with officers about how this all started, which was just about, I'd say, an hour ago in the Hollywood area.
Certainly erratic behavior by this driver who is still refusing to come out of that truck. We do know that officers are typically giving a lot of vocal instructions, telling this person to come out, to, throw the keys out, to put their hands out of the window. And we are seeing no movement from this driver at this point. And with that reflection of the windshield, it's really hard to see what's happening. Oftentimes, when a pursuit ends like this, we'll see the person moving around. A lot of times they'll, be using a lot of hand gestures, movement of their arm, but we unfortunately can't see any of this at this vantage point with that glare on the windshield. But certainly, you just don't know how desperate this person is to avoid being taken into custody.
Yeah, well, one of the things you said, Amy, is when, police did get out of the car, several officers, they were out, they were ready to go, and then they backed off. And, it makes you wonder, what did they see or what did they hear to make them back off so quickly as they did?
Well, and
there's a good amount of officers out there.
Yeah. And then I think also, putting that truck in reverse certainly shows a very obvious sign that this person is really desperate and trying to get away. Now, we have seen on the one side of Coldwater that the traffic has been turned around, but on the other side, Mark, we have not seen a lot of movement. And I don't know if it's because that is a more narrow section of the roadway and maybe not as easily maneuvered to make that, 3-point turn to get headed in the other direction. But anyone that is familiar with this roadway knows that it is narrow, it is windy, and we did see this driver going at very slow speeds.
What do you think his max was? Like 10, 15 miles per hour?
Maybe
That was a slow
at
one.
one point, but very slow. And so you never know what is happening, why this truck was going so slow. Is it because there was some type of damage that happened, that it couldn't go any faster, or if it was just the driver who was just purposely driving slow?
We just don't know. These are all great questions. It's difficult to tell why that went down the way that it did, why it was going so slow. Now, Skycal's maneuvering a little bit to get a better perspective here to see if we can see any sort of movement on the driver's side. Usually when we get this perspective, we can see some movement down there, but due to the overcast conditions and the glare, we're really not seeing anything in there right now. I want to also mention, someone on our assignment desk just mentioned it to me, LA City Fire Station 108 is less than a mile away from the scene. So if there are any injuries, there will be an ambulance right here from Fire Station 108 if necessary. They have not been called yet to this scene.
This is a good vantage point right
And
here.
yes, exactly right, Chris. We are seeing a much better vantage point. Looks like the driver's side window is up, undamaged. We haven't seen any damage. There was no beanbag round from this side. But boy, those are dark windows, aren't they?
They really are.
And you could see a lot of the officers, they had the rubber bullets and the guns there and just kind of waiting to see what happens. But I wonder if they're going to bust out the other back window on the left-hand side, on the driver's side, like they did the passenger right side, to kind of get a better idea of what's inside. Because I mean, even if you're standing on the street right next to the car, you probably can't really see much inside because of that dark tint.
Yeah, it's tough for them to get on the other side, though, because they always want to be facing in the same direction. They don't want to have any chance of that crossfire, friendly fire incident happening. So it seems like they're all trying to stay on that one side of the truck, but perhaps they could get around and get something into that side.
Imagine being this homeowner. You look outside your window and you see all this activity. Like the best thing to do, stay inside if you live in that area, because as you mentioned, crossfire or if anything were to happen, you just never know where those bullets can go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are several tools in their toolkit that they could ultimately use if they felt safe in terms of bringing this driver into compliance. We've already seen beanbag rounds used to shatter the rear glass on the passenger side. You can see it right there in the center of your screen with Skycal. They could also use pepper balls. That's a little bit more difficult if the windows are not down already or shattered completely, because they could just be ineffective if they don't actually get inside the compartment. If SWAT team arrives, they actually have a long pole that they have, a very long pole. So it's 15, 20, 25 feet long, where they actually attach a canister of some kind of agent. It could be tear gas, could be pepper spray, something, where they literally will just poke it through the window and place it into the cabin. And that is very effective, but it does put SWAT officers in danger because they have to approach close enough to actually use that pole. We really haven't seen that unless they are absolutely sure this driver does not have some kind of a firearm or a way to retaliate with force. Or they could simply do what they're doing now, is just wait this driver out. Eventually, the psychology is going to kick in and this driver is going to realize they have nowhere to go. They will ultimately surrender. But adding to the time on this, the clock is ticking, as this is a major thoroughfare through a very important part of Los Angeles. And if this were happening on perhaps a neighborhood street that was off to the side, LAPD wouldn't have that added pressure of bringing this to an end so quickly. They cannot keep Coldwater Canyon closed forever, especially on a Friday, where it is going to become a cascading and escalating amount of traffic as it ripples out from here. And it's going to make a lot of people's lives miserable if they don't bring this to an end in a meaningful amount of time, just because of where it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And at first I was wondering, this hedge right here, why wasn't the truck able to go forward? But that looks like it's a wall with bushes around it. So the wall basically stopping it from going into that home, which is good to see. I'm sure the homeowner likes to see that.
Yeah, still probably causing some damage to the property there, but feeling, I'm sure, that they are being held captive in their home right now because they cannot leave, which is a tough situation. The good thing here is that we have not seen those tires spinning for the last I'd say maybe 10 minutes or so, Mark, which is boxed in, nowhere to go but to come out. We are seeing a little movement there with the officers. And I'm trying to see, Mark, do you think it's the officer in the farthest vehicle that has been giving the commands, or maybe that center one right behind that has been talking to the suspect? Yeah,
I think that group over to the left, that certainly is probably the sergeant, perhaps a lieutenant. I'm not sure that's down there. That's command staff certainly that is going to be directing this, along with the air unit overhead. They're in communication, and certainly the watch commander back at Hollywood Division. They are formulating the plan on how to handle this. These are experienced officers. Certainly, if you've worked long enough for the LAPD in Los Angeles, you have been at 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 of these pursuit standoffs. It's unfortunately more common than the LAPD would like in the city of Los Angeles. So these are experienced officers. They train for this. They actually have a training facility in Mission Hills, which I actually was able to go and attend a media day years ago, where they actually, believe it or not, have a course, almost a racetrack style course at this training facility in Mission Hills, where they engage in pursuits, where they do pursuit training. And at least years ago, I met one of the primary pursuit training drivers that teaches other officers how to conduct pit maneuvers. He's a man from Boston. I don't know if he still does it now, but he actually used to be a race car driver. And he transitioned to law enforcement. And they have a training program out there where they teach officers how to do this. In addition to, they built a small town on this training facility in Mission Hills where they can recreate scenarios like this. So they use that also, they used it both for training, for pursuit standoffs like this. They use that same small town. It's got fake buildings in it and facades. They use it for protest training as well, where they can simulate a protest. We've certainly seen that in all parts of Southern California. But these officers, you can almost guarantee, have gone through some sort of training at that Mission Hills facility, or I believe it's Mission Hills. And this is what they train for. So you can see the officers, they're calm, they're collected, they take a stance. It's different from other law enforcement agencies in Southern California. LAPD certainly has a more wait and see kind of approach. They're not as aggressive in terms of other law enforcement agencies that sometimes like to approach. But we did just see last week a very aggressive move with a domestic violence suspect in a pursuit with a white Mustang. I believe it was the 18th. It was actually last Friday, I think it was, where that driver got out of the car and LAPD rushed him and took him to the ground. Now, in that case, it was because the victim of a kidnapping was in the passenger seat. So LAPD officers at the time believed it was very important that that driver not get back in the car. However, in this case, it may not be that there is any sort of victim or anyone else in that car that is in danger beyond the driver right now.
Yeah, and they always have to, proceed as if that person does have a weapon, and they cannot just walk up to the vehicle. They have to wait it out, make sure that. The door's opening.
Finally.
We're seeing the door open.
He woke up from his nap.
First time that we have seen anything like this.
It's a woman?
And this is a woman.
It's a woman.
A woman in a pink shirt, dark hair, short dark hair, pink shirt.
Spoke too soon.
Yes,
it's one of those situations that we have to be careful. We say people because we don't know if it's a man or a woman.
And this time we see that it is a woman. She was in a pink shirt, dark colored hair. She did get out. She said something to those officers. A lot of times, people just aren't in the right frame of mind. She probably got out and said, hey, I need to go somewhere. She may have just told them, I'm not coming out.
And it looked like she was kind of flailing her arms and body. And, usually when we see something like that, they're under the influence of something, a lot of times drugs. And, I mean, you don't know what's going on here, but that was a very erratic movement that she just did.
Yes, and could be very dangerous for her to get out like that. You can see the positioning of those officers has changed a little bit, and I'm guessing that they are talking to her, and she may have opened up that door to respond to them, whatever commands that they've been getting.
She did seem frightened a little bit.
She seemed agitated, definitely, and they're probably saying different things to her, and she got out to let them know she wasn't ready to come out. So it was just a quick response. But, Mark, I wonder, how that may change what they are going to do now that they've seen her. She did open up the door. Whatever they were saying, they may, in fact, try to say more of that to see if they can get her out. As you were talking about that last pursuit, that man involved in the pursuit you were speaking about with the suspect and that kidnapping victim, that person kept getting out of the car. And it was one of those times when that suspect got out that they did rush that driver. And so they may be getting ready, if she were to get out again, that they would be ready to take her into custody as well.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I wonder if LAPD may have just gotten eyes on that driver the same time we did. They may not have known who that was. Because when that driver got out, we may actually see it right here. If you notice, the stance of the officers very rapidly changes for a moment. As that driver gets out and then back in again, you can see LAPD officers suddenly relax and all look at each other and perhaps exchange a few words. And now they have sort of resumed their stance of pointing their weapons at this vehicle. So this may have been new data for the LAPD at exactly the same time that it was new data for us as well, because those windows are so deeply tinted. And this entire time on the scanner, I have not heard them describe the driver at all. So they may not have known who that was either.
And we all, oftentimes it is a man, and in this case it's a woman, which is rare to see. But, Amy said it best. This woman, got out of the car. She seems agitated. If this person is in fact having some sort of mental health issue or episode that's going on, this is when the officers use their mental health resources to talk to them and approach them in maybe a different way than somebody who was not having some sort of mental health episode. Unfortunately, it's something we're seeing more and more throughout the city, throughout the country. And when it comes to that, you never know what could happen. So obviously they got to take a different route to get this person to surrender, and hopefully safely.
Mark, are you hearing new information?
Yeah, I'm trying to listen to the scanner. There was some fragmented radio traffic that they're asking for a different type of unit to respond. It sounded like they said MEU, but I'm not sure if I heard that right. So I'm trying to actually look up what that is. I'm not sure. That might be a metropolitan unit, which would indicate that perhaps SWAT is on their way, the Metro Division. I'm not sure if I heard that right. So I'm actually replaying it. We have a pretty powerful scanner system here that logs all the radio traffic. I can actually replay it a few seconds in the past. So I'm trying to listen to see if I can hear what that is.
We'll let you listen to that. Again, if you are just joining us at 10:45, we've been watching this pursuit suspect. Okay. Mark, you want...
Yeah, it's a mental evaluation unit.
Yeah,
I did hear it correctly.
that
MEU stands for Mental Evaluation Unit, and the LAPD is asking for that to respond. So it could be that they have some information on the ground that this person may be experiencing a mental health episode.
I think when she jumped out of the truck, whatever it is that she did say to them, her reaction led them to change course here in how they are handling this suspect. But again, if you are just joining us at 10:45, this is the end of a pursuit. This is where this truck has ended up. It was right around 10 o'clock this morning that this driver was involved in a minor hit and run. You can see damage at the front of the truck. This driver, which we do know now is a female, took these officers on a very slow speed pursuit through Coldwater Canyon. If you're familiar with the area, this is a very windy, narrow road. This driver going very slow, 5 to 10 miles per hour. Officers put 2 different spike strips out. This truck did go over them. Both of the front tires are flattened. They also attempted a pit maneuver. However, because the truck was going so slow, the truck did stop temporarily. We're showing you now on the right side of your screen that spike strip that it did go over. There were actually 2 spike strips that were used, but you can see how slow that truck is going. So soon after that, here is that pit maneuver attempt, but because of the slow speeds, it doesn't work quite as well as if that driver were going about 30 miles per hour. Now, the driver never really picked up a lot of speed, but going about, 15 maybe at some point, but not fast at all. Ended up here, Chris, in front of this home.
Yeah, this is all happening in the Hollywood Hills off of Coldwater. And, we just heard Mark say that they're calling in an MEU, so a medical evaluation unit that's going to come, because obviously she was a little erratic when she got out of that vehicle. And when it comes to situations like this, it could take a while for this person, to surrender. And if SWAT does come out, that could take even longer. Keep in mind, this is Coldwater. This is what connects the San Fernando Valley to the west side, and it's very, very busy. It's Friday. People are off work early. They're going to lunch, what have you. So just keep that in mind. This is going to affect traffic, and if this pursuit or this standoff continues, it's going to last for, it's going to be a mess out there.
A lot of people use these canyon roads to avoid the 405.
Yeah, okay, so just got a significant new piece of information from the LAPD. So the units on the ground just got information from headquarters. They ran the license plate of this truck, and apparently they have contacted the owner, and they are now declaring that this truck is what's called an unreported stolen, which means that this truck has been stolen, but there is not a police report yet filed.
Because they didn't know that it was stolen?
It could be that, or it could be so recent, perhaps just in the last 2 hours, that it was stolen, but it is now considered a stolen vehicle, probably very likely, like I said, in the very recent past.
Yeah.
So again, now we are looking at, if you put the puzzle pieces together, we have a mental health evaluation unit coming to deal with this driver, a hit and run in Hollywood with this truck, and this truck is stolen.
And I drive Hollywood Highland every single morning to go to work. At 3:45 in the morning, there's always a lot of transients and people who are having mental health issues, what have you, or addiction issues. Not saying that this is it, but in that area, you got a wide variety of people. And if it was something that was recently stolen, I mean, who knows who this person is?
So,
can we see if they were wearing shoes or not?
It was difficult to see. Skycal was on the
wrong
wrong side, unfortunately. It's a crowded set of airspace up there right now. We've got multiple air units, including other media airships like Skycal, and then at least 1, possibly 2 law enforcement air commanders up there that are keeping an eye on this. But now it's pretty safe to assume that the person behind the wheel of this truck is not the owner, as it is an unreported stolen. And that very likely indicates that LAPD is probably with the true owner of this truck, who is describing the situation under which it was taken.
Yeah, certainly, we are waiting this one out along with the officers as we continue to watch this unfold. Again, this truck being driven by a woman who refused to pull over, did not stop, and managed to get herself wedged between this hedge and those cruisers there, and we see plenty of officers. Traffic was backed up. We did see some of that traffic being rerouted on one side, and getting some assistance from officers, because if you are familiar with the area, this is a very narrow, windy road, and officers did get there and help some of these drivers get turned around and out of the area. We've also heard about the homeowner who's in this house right in front of
What's going on out here? Yeah,
exactly. Coming out wondering what was happening, and was told to stay in their home. So they're unable to move. And at this point, we are waiting for more crews to arrive for a mental evaluation crew that will come and help this driver who is having some trouble here. We did see her get out just a short time ago, and that is the time when we all realized that it was a woman who was behind the wheel of this Toyota Tacoma that we now know has been reported stolen.
Yeah, that woman, she was in and out of her vehicle so fast, didn't really have much to say, but obviously her body language or whatever she may have said was enough for authorities and police to be like, hey, we need to call in the MEU, the Medical Evaluation Unit, to come help us deal with this potential mental health issue that's going on. And just by looking at the speeds and what she may be going through and the fear that she may have, those are all things that kind of get people to freeze and just to be like, what do I do? Because their brain and their chemical imbalance is not functioning the way that someone who is not experiencing that.
Exactly. Exactly. And Mark, you just are listening as they're just waiting for that MEU
I can hear the air
arrive.
unit directing traffic and other LAPD units in. It's a traffic problem. I mean, even the LAPD is having trouble getting through. There just aren't a lot of options getting around this blockage. This is such a narrow area with people just trying to get in and out on their own, just going about their business. But I can hear the air unit, one of the air units, the commander, is just tasked with getting more help here. So this is just the logistics of doing police work in this part of town, is getting that MEU unit and perhaps other officers here for traffic control. I have not heard a request yet for metro units, which would be the SWAT team, if they felt that was necessary. It may not be, because this person may not have any sort of firearm on them, or LAPD doesn't believe that they are in the danger, a great amount of danger, that they would need tactical officers and tactical gear, body armor here. But there is still this standoff progressing, and of course the neighbors in this community are probably inundated with noise, traffic. It's a frightening thing to experience on a Friday morning, certainly if you're just trying to enjoying your home in the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah, and so many people use these canyon roads, including Coldwater, if they're, maybe trying to bypass part of the 101 and the 405. This is kind of a nice little shortcut. It is often very packed, especially on a Friday morning. You've got so much traffic going up and down this canyon road, along with the others. Laurel and Benedict, so many people use the canyon roads, and so this was one of those mornings where a lot of people got trapped behind this, in front of this, and as you mentioned, Mark, units are trying to get these people turned around, but it is a tricky maneuver because this is a very narrow, windy road, and depending on where they stopped, it depends on how easily they can actually maneuver the curve or the narrow part of the roadway.
And for many, it's not an easy feat. So this is going to ruin your Friday, that's for sure. So like I said, if you have any friends or family who plan on heading in this area, this is Coldwater connecting San Fernando Valley to the west side, let them know, because this is going to be closed for quite some time. I mean, it was a slow pursuit. Now it's going to be a slow standoff.
Well, I'll tell you that you're right. This could be a while. I'm actually hearing the radio traffic now that LAPD may be setting up a mobile command post for this,
Wow.
which just means that there'll be more command staff here, and they are concerned that this person may be in an extended standoff. We don't know what kind of communication that this driver is giving to LAPD, but there is some indication that they are simply refusing and show no signs of budging. That could be, it could be that this person is just not communicating at all, which means that there has been no progress in getting them to understand that they need to surrender, or that LAPD has tried to tell them that they need to be taken into custody, or whatever the communication is. Sometimes no communication at all is just the worst, because LAPD has no idea what's in store, what this driver is thinking, or what their intentions are. So yeah, a mobile command post now being set up to handle this situation, an extended standoff here on this Friday morning.
Yeah, and I think you said it best, Mark, when it came to the lady getting outside of the truck and getting out, going back in. They got new data, and from there, that's when they called in the MAU to come out. Because at first, I mean, like you could see, those windows are so dark, you really can't see much at all. And they did use some rubber bullets for the back right passenger window to get an idea of what was going on. But obviously, they saw something else that caused for concern.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, just seeing that while she was pinned in, she still put this truck in reverse and was still, hitting the gas, trying to get away, despite the fact that she was pinned in. Nowhere to go in front of her, nowhere to go behind her, but she was still desperately attempting to get out of this situation. And, it just showed, the mindset of the person behind this wheel that, they would do anything to get out of the situation. And we just continue to watch as she has stayed inside this truck and made that one quick appearance where she got out, definitely said something to those officers that are on the ground that had them question her mental stability at this moment. And they did call in more resources. The MEU, as Mark has told us, that is a mental evaluation unit that will come in and, speak to her differently, because there are people that are trained to deal with these types of crises, Mark.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was actually reading up on the LAPD's mental evaluation unit. It's been in place for quite some time, and it's specifically designed to deal with people at crime scenes that are suspected of having a mental illness. It specifically seeks to de-escalate these situations without the use of force. This really has been a pioneering field in law enforcement to try and take care of situations where perhaps the person involved that's having this mental health episode is unable to truly understand what is happening. So these are officers or civilians even that are specifically trained to de-escalate these situations with people who are experiencing mental health episodes. That could be either from a mental illness or perhaps issues involving drugs or alcohol. Either way, this is a way to try to end this without the use of force, which had become an issue nationwide with the prevalence of mental health episodes creating situations where the police were called to deal with it. So we're going to see these negotiators and these, essentially, they're like counselors almost, officers. They're going to do this to try and get this person to surrender peacefully. But the first step is getting that driver to communicate with officers in the first place. And it's unclear right now, Amy, if that's even happening.
Yeah, exactly. And it did not appear that she was interacting with them until we saw her jump out of that truck. We don't know what she was saying, but clearly it was very animated. We saw the use of her arms as she yelled something quickly back to them and jumped right back in that truck. But, they are going to wait this one out and bring in those additional resources to help with the mental health of this driver that is behind the wheel. You have been watching KCAL News 10 at 10 as we've been following this pursuit, and we are handing off to Jamie Yukas, who will continue to bring you this pursuit on both KCAL and CBS.
And we want to welcome in our CBS viewers. We've been live for about an hour now on our station KCAL as well, watching a pursuit that has now ended in a suspect standoff. As you're watching on your screen right now, you can see those officers, at least one officer with some type of weapon pulled there and just surrounding that vehicle. This was a very slow pursuit along Coldwater Canyon in the Hollywood Hills. They eventually had to throw out stop sticks to get this car to be able to come to a stop. It kind of rammed into this hedge, and you see the officers were able to then kind of wedge it in there. However, the driver, a woman, did try to continue to back up several times, tried to, try to get away. On the right-hand side of your screen now, you are looking at what was the pursuit. You can see the officers there using those stop sticks, which eventually did lead to her stopping. But you're watching right now as they've now set up a potential mobile command post on the left-hand side of your screen after this pursuit came to an end. It has been like this for at least the last 15, 20 minutes or so, that they've just been surrounding the car and the suspect. The suspect did get out of the car at one point in time, apparently looked to say something to the officers that have now led them to call in the mental evaluation unit. And that's kind of where we are sitting. You can see, too, as the Skycal pulls out right now, there are a number of homes in this area. This is a residential area, obviously very narrow streets. You see a fire truck there on scene as well within the area, and then you see some other officers. So this is obviously having a huge impact, not only on this neighborhood in particular, but obviously traffic getting in and out and over the Hollywood Hills area. This is kind of a bypass for people. I take this way home sometimes to avoid the 405 or the 101. It's an easy way to just kind of cut through sometimes. And you can see there's officers on other streets as well, kind of surrounding, letting neighbors know what's going on. Obviously, you have a helicopter up this long over the area. People start wondering what's happening. But as you see, we've been sitting at this scene. I want to bring in Mark Liu now from the desk to see if there are any new details he's learned so far.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that first LA City Fire Unit, engine 108. That's from Fire Station 108, which is just about a mile away from here. That's really near the southern end of this. You mentioned that Coldwater is just completely closed in both directions. They're closing it southbound at Harvard Westlake, which is just south of Ventura and Laurel, Ventura and Coldwater to the north, and I believe it's closed on the southbound side at Mulholland and Coldwater. This is just an awful mess in terms of traffic, people trying to get across the Hollywood Hills, not expecting to have Coldwater closed at this time of day, and it looks like it's going to be an extended closure. And as you had mentioned, this is indeed a hit-and-run suspect. LAPD now tells us the initial hit-and-run was a misdemeanor hit-and-run, Jamie, at about 9:30, somewhere between Hollywood and Highland and Hollywood and Vine. That silver Toyota Tacoma pickup involved in what is ostensibly being described to us as not a very serious collision with another vehicle there, but we did see some damage to the front end of that silver pickup. Unclear if that's what happened in that hit and run. But then this driver apparently took off. And that just escalated this from a simple misdemeanor hit and run to now multiple felonies, including reckless driving, felony evading. And at one point, Jamie, the LAPD could ostensibly ask for a charge here of assault on a police officer because that driver reversed into an LAPD unit, and that is considered assault on a police officer felony with a deadly weapon, the weapon being, of course, the truck. Now, just in about the last 15 or 20 minutes or so, we had mentioned that the mental evaluation unit has been called to the scene. They're having trouble getting there because of all of the traffic.
As you can imagine.
And also, headquarters has radioed to the commanders at the scene that they did run the license plate of this silver pickup, and it came back to something called being an unreported stolen, which means that this truck is considered a stolen vehicle, but perhaps it has been stolen in such the recent past that an official stolen vehicle report has not been submitted. So it's perhaps that the owner, in all likelihood, they ran the plate, contacted the owner and said, is this your car? And the owner said, it's just been stolen from me. Oh, man. So now this driver, we're trying to put the pieces together here, mental health evaluation, hit and run in Hollywood, and a stolen vehicle. It's unclear. LAPD has a lot of variables on their hand in terms of dealing with this driver, which is why they're asking for a mobile command post.
Well, and you don't know. I mean, she could have a weapon inside the vehicle. She hasn't seemed to brandish one at this point in time at all. She just herself got out of the vehicle at one point, seemed to shout at police, but they really don't know exactly what they're dealing with. They also don't know if there has been drug use or alcohol use or a combination of the two in this case, or if this is just a mental health episode potentially for this woman. You know, there's so many unknowns. I know police officers don't like the unknown. That's why you see them. You know, I've heard a lot of people ask me in these types of situations, well, why don't they just go in? Why don't they just shoot at the vehicle? Why don't they, you know, and it's one of those things that until you have all the pieces of information, you really can't act. And that's why they're having to shut down Coldwater in both directions at this point in time and just wait. You have to wonder what is going through her mind right now as she just continues to sit in the vehicle. And she only got out of the vehicle very, very briefly. And in those cases, usually you see somebody exit, they either try to run or they go down to the ground and give up. And in this situation, this is also making it somewhat unusual that she really had very little reaction and then just got back into the truck. Of course, we're not aware of what she ended up saying to the officers. You can see the LAPD helicopter still still up as well. You have to wonder too, does she have a cell phone? Is she in contact with anybody? Are there other people potentially involved if this is an unreported stolen vehicle? Were there potentially other crimes committed using the vehicle? So I'm sure they're running, trying to figure out all that information as well. Because you don't know. But you see them all standing still securely. You know, their body language initially, it didn't seem that they were that concerned. Now, you know, just them being there and staying away from the vehicle means that she said something that is keeping them back.
Yeah, and one of the things that we were discussing, and I want to just touch on it again, is that it appears that she's the only one in that vehicle.
Yeah.
So there is certainly a little bit of a different tactic that the LAPD is going to take, just in reference to what we saw exactly 1 week ago. I believe it was last Friday. It was on the 18th, I believe, when we had a high-speed pursuit involving a white Mustang that went the wrong way on the freeway. That was a domestic violence suspect and a kidnapping suspect. And there was a kidnapping victim in the passenger seat at the time.
Right.
So LAPD took the opportunity as soon as that driver stepped away from that car last Friday. They rushed that man and took him down because there was a great fear that they did not want him getting back into that car and getting away, starting the pursuit again with that kidnapping victim. In this particular case, there may be there's very likely no one else in that truck. We've heard no discussion about a second person in there, passenger, suspect, whatever. So LAPD believes they are only dealing with just that driver. Now we can see here there are ambulances and fire trucks on standby, which they always do to assist LAPD in a position where there is a standoff. Potentially there could be any kind of any injuries here. They are from Fire Station 108, I believe. There is, again, right down the way. You can see officers here. That's the 15 on the top of the car. That's LAPD North Hollywood Division. So now we're dealing with officers from multiple divisions have called in. North Hollywood is handling the traffic because this is technically their area, but Hollywood Division officers, they're the ones right there up against the back of that pickup truck because they're the ones that initiated this pursuit and were investigating that misdemeanor hit and run that was originally the reason that they were chasing that driver. Now, there is command staff that's down there. There's certainly a sergeant, possibly a lieutenant as well, and the air unit overhead. I just counted actually 2 LAPD air units. One of them was just doing traffic control because they're trying to assist getting their officers in here. And what you're seeing on the right side of the screen, Jamie, you mentioned this before, these are the spike strips, 2 of them on this pickup. I believe both of the tires in the front were deflated. And then this fairly low-speed pit maneuver. This seemed very slow for a pit maneuver. LAPD likes to have it at about 25 to 35 miles an hour. If it's too slow, it doesn't work well. If it's too fast, it's too dangerous. And this one wasn't entirely effective. You can see that pickup truck just kept limping along and then ended up here on this section of Coldwater where it has remained for about the last 40 minutes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we're showing on the right-hand side where this pursuit eventually comes to an end right here at this hedge, right? But now you see the vehicle trying to back up, you know, officers having to try to get it to stop, and she just doesn't stop. I mean, she drives then into the hedge, and you have to wonder what is going through her mind at this point in time, because she's now wedged in. It's very clear she's wedged in with officers surrounding her, and she still continues to try to back up the truck. So it was an unusual pursuit. Most pursuits are unusual. This one unusual for that reason at this point in time. And now with the standoff occurring, obviously becoming more impactful to the area. You know, usually with pursuits, we talk a lot about the safety on the roadways and the high speeds and the impact that it can have on other drivers. This is having an impact on drivers where they cannot get over the hill. And, you know, whether you're going north or south, you already have PCH closed. So I know a number of people on the west side, this is a very easy way to get to and from, or try to take a shortcut, or maybe get on it momentarily and make your way back to the highway. That's now cut off. PCH is cut off. So I have to imagine traffic on the 405 is looking a little bit heavier than usual on a Friday as well. So this impacting not just this particular area of the Hollywood Hills, but if you are having to go from the valley to the west side today, this is going to be something that will impact your afternoon, because we don't know how long that they will be here at this point in time, because we have been talking about this pursuit. It started right moments before 10 a.m. We're now an hour and 10 minutes in to that time frame, and we've been sitting on this now for about 25, 30 minutes of officers just kind of waiting. They're waiting for that mental evaluation unit to get on scene, as Mark has been talking about. As we're talking about traffic, how difficult it would be for somebody to get in there. So we're waiting on that right now, and the driver just sitting in the vehicle.
Yeah, and you know, there's the clock is ticking here for LAPD. The standoffs are never something that they want, but if this had been a standoff perhaps in a small neighborhood street that was out of the way, there's certainly a little less pressure, but certainly LAPD commanders here are feeling the pressure of keeping a major thoroughfare through the Hollywood Hills closed on a Friday as we approach the noontime hour. This is not something that they want to see. There are not a lot of ways to get over the Hollywood Hills. I mean, Coldwater is a major thoroughfare, and this is more on the north side, but an entire other division is helping Hollywood division with this. North Hollywood has pulled officers out of their patrol in order to come and direct traffic. First, it was just to get people off of Coldwater that were stuck in lanes because they couldn't go any further, and it's very difficult to turn around, so it would have been dangerous to go the wrong way on Coldwater. So there are certainly LAPD North Hollywood Division officers that are assisting with civilians getting out of there, and then they have to do traffic control at the multiple intersections to the north and south of this to make sure that people don't wander into the scene. They're closing everything down. And so if you're heading up northbound on one of these streets from Hollywood or southbound from the Valley, you suddenly are faced with the prospect that you don't have a lot of different ways to go. This can get very tight very quickly, and you can't turn around very fast.
No.
So, you know, this is a big problem for the people that are heading through here, as LAPD just wants this driver to come out and comply. She doesn't appear to be even communicating. We have not seen the windows roll down, Jamie. Many of the times in standoff pursuits like this, we see the driver yell or shout or try to plead their case with the LAPD. This is radio silence from this driver, which is both alarming and disconcerting for the LAPD units on the ground because they don't know what she's going to do next.
Yeah.
It's very frightening for everybody involved.
Well, and you know, in some of these cases, there has been some type of substance use, but generally when you are on a substance, you have way more erratic behavior, right? So to continue sitting in the vehicle, that may not be the case, and they don't know that piece of it as well, and then you have to wonder if there's what else is going on in terms of her mental health. That's why they're bringing in that evaluation unit to make sure that you know, is good before they move in on the suspect. But do we know exactly where the chase started from?
Yes. So we're actually getting a little bit of information here about that. So this started at about 9:30 with a misdemeanor hit and run in the Hollywood area, somewhere between Hollywood and Highland and Hollywood and Vine. Now this silver pickup was involved with what LAPD described as a misdemeanor collision, and then this driver fled, and the victim stayed behind. So that victim is communicating with LAPD and explaining what this happened. So at least LAPD has that side of it. That's also probably why they were able to get a very good description of the vehicle they were looking for. It was about 15 to 20 minutes later at around Laurel Canyon and Olympus, which is about a mile and a half away from the collision scene, that they tried to pull this driver over. Now, I can tell you here at the desk on the scanners, I actually heard that traffic stop, and this driver did initially comply,
and
pulled
stopped.
over and stopped. And I'll tell you, in the background, very, very faintly, I could hear yelling as the LAPD officers were saying that they had pulled over the hit and run driver. I believe it may have been that driver. It certainly wasn't an officer that was yelling. And then moments later, I heard that very familiar radio traffic that we hear often at the assignment desk. All units on all frequencies stand by. We are in pursuit of a silver truck. So that's when that pursuit started. Now, there is some information we are getting now from LAPD headquarters that the driver may know the victim.
Ah, okay.
So that they're still trying to sort this out.
So now, okay, and it's an unreported stolen vehicle.
It's an unreported stolen, which may indicate this may have been taken perhaps right at the moment of the hit and run. We don't know. But the LAPD is still trying to sort that out. It's unclear what that is now at this point.
Which just adds a whole nother layer of questions,
Yes.
right? Like if they
Yes.
knew each other, were they in a relationship? Was she mad about something? Was she, they had a big fight? Had they, were they married? Are they, what is, you have to find out, right? Is it, and what would maybe push somebody over the edge in a situation
Right. We
like that?
We just don't know yet. LAPD is still investigating that, but some of the information they're getting from the victim may point to that being the case here. So that's what we have certainly here, and that's what the MEU, the Mental Evaluation Unit, when they get on scene, it's unclear if they're there. We haven't really seen any officers approach in about the last 20 minutes or so, but when they arrive, they will certainly be addressing that and trying to communicate with the driver. But that's one obstacle they're going to have to get over, and that's communication. We haven't seen any of that from this driver, aside from that
Just
very
one,
brief 2 or 3 second incidents where that driver got out, yelled something at police, and got back in.
Right, which also is familiar, I guess, because that's what you're saying you've somewhat heard at the initial stop. So,
Yelling, exactly.
Right,
that is correct.
so you heard yelling. So there seems to be some anger there, if nothing else, and we don't know over what. So that is an interesting development if she does in fact know the hit and run victim in this case. I also, Mark, this is just me, I have trouble sometimes with my directions of back and forth, the north-south bound. So was she in Hollywood, then went toward the valley, and then was going back toward Hollywood? Okay.
Yes, that is correct. That's what we believe how that happened. I'm actually going to look at the radar track and see if I can figure out exactly the way that went. It was quite the pursuit from the valley. They came north from the Hollywood area and then back south. into this area. I believe that's how that went.
Then you have to wonder too, if she's going back toward where the victim is she trying to get back? Is there something familiar then in Hollywood, or she knows that that's where the victim is, or why she would want to go back that direction if she was already the other way, far away from the initial scene?
Great question. A lot of times when they read out the license plate, which they have on this truck, they will say that the registered owner is out of a particular city. They just didn't say that on the radio this time. That happens. It may not be relevant to the discussion. So sometimes we can hear where the registered owner lives, but in this particular case, they did not discuss that. It's not out of the ordinary.
No, but it's also interesting though, right? Because I think a lot of times we watch these pursuits and we see that the drivers kind of stick to one part of town or somewhere that they're familiar with, or they pull into, a parking lot or something that they know that they can get in and out of because they're from that area. So it's just, it's another piece of the puzzle as to the initial crash happens in Hollywood, she ends up in the valley and then was going back toward Hollywood during the pursuit. And as to why that would be, maybe there is something familiar here, maybe there isn't, maybe it's just a coincidence, then that was the track she decided to take. But these are all questions I'm sure officers are also asking. You can see that officer has a handgun now drawn.
Yeah, this is a slightly different stance that we're seeing there. That officer certainly has a service weapon in his hand. That's definitely a firearm. Now the officer is behind. You see there's a shorter woman and then there's a man with a green strap with a 40 millimeter.
Yep.
That is a foam rifle that you can actually just see. Do you see the blue object that's on that?
Oh yeah.
That's the projectile. It's very big. It's roughly the size of a baseball. It's a foam rubber and it really hurts if you get hit, but it's designed.
Yeah, they're solid. Those are solid.
It's not designed to puncture the skin, but boy, will that leave a bruise and a lot of pain. A lot of suspects, after they are struck by that, immediately surrender. It'll take the wind out of you if it hits you in the chest.
Yeah.
And they call it less than lethal because it does hit with enough force. It could possibly be a fatal impact, but very rarely. So LAPD uses it to subdue suspects without the danger of using bullets. And then right behind that officer with the 40 millimeter, another less than lethal weapon. That looks like a beanbag shotgun, which we have also seen used already twice. That might even be the officer that fired it. That fires a shotgun round, but instead of birdshot or buckshot coming out of that shell, it's a bag, a small beanbag filled with BBs in it.
And that's what hit the back window, right?
We believe that's what was fired into the back window. Yeah,
which is now broken.
Which is now broken. An officer fired a weapon of that type twice. We saw no impact on the driver. I mean, it certainly didn't change the driver's attitude or compliance at all. It's unclear why that officer opened fire at that point, but it didn't end the standoff in any way. So they have deployed at least that less than lethal technology here to try and subdue the driver, but ineffective, unfortunately.
You know, I am finding it interesting. It seems like there are small moments of change, right? So now we do see some officers with their handguns out, not just these non-lethal weapons involved, as we continue to wait for the mental evaluation unit to get on scene. I haven't seen anybody new pull up here. This seems to be all the same officers. I also find it interesting, Mark, like usually in these cases, you know, she's gotten out, she yells something at the officer, she gets back in the truck. Normally we see the suspects sometimes like putting their head out the window or really being erratic inside the truck, or, you know, trying to scream or, you know, do different things. I don't see her at all. At all. I mean, I know there's a little bit of tint on the window, but she was wearing a purple shirt. You'd think that you might be able to see something. There's like maybe a little small movement, but or is that an animal? Do you see that, Mark?
Where?
In the windshield? Is there?
We haven't seen really any movement. These are pretty heavily tinted windows, and to your point, this is fairly odd in the sense that this driver is absolutely radio silent in dealing with the police. Other than that episode where the driver stepped out and yelled something and got back in, we haven't seen any communication. And you're right, many times during these standoffs, we've seen suspects attempt to plead their case with the LAPD or explain the situation or ask to be let go or to say whatever they may be saying. In this case, this driver is silent. We have not seen the window come down. We haven't seen anything at all in that regard. And so this is probably very frustrating for officers that they can't reason or talk with this driver at all. And approaching this car is dangerous for everyone involved. That's the last case scenario. It's really what they don't want to have to pull that driver out. It puts officers in danger, it puts the driver in danger, it very likely cause some more damage to this pickup, which this driver does not own.
Right.
So there's all kinds of consequences for doing that. They would much rather have this driver surrender peacefully.
Well, and you know, you were just talking about how there appears now to be some type of relationship between the driver of this vehicle and the driver of the initial vehicle that was hit in a hit and run, which was the earlier, why the car was being pulled over. But if there is a relationship between these two, officers really, really do not like domestic situations. They're often very volatile. There's a lot of high emotions. People act very out of character. You know, you've got just a lot going on. And I know, you know, from covering many domestic violence incidents over the course of my career, it's usually the most deadly for officers going into those situations and not knowing. So that's another reason they may be standing away from the vehicle, because they don't know where she's at mentally right now, especially as they learn new pieces of information. Like we just did a short time ago, that it appears that the driver has a relationship with the person she hit and then ran off from in Hollywood. But you know, we continue to watch this scene. It has now been going on, as Mark said, it started around 9:30 this morning, so we're coming up on almost 2 hours now. And I just keep thinking about the rest of the area. You know, we focus on, obviously, this picture and wanting to see this resolved and, you know, wanting to keep officers safe and have this come to a good conclusion just for this picture alone. But then, you know, as you spread out, I think about the homeowners in this area that are now, you know, likely either trapped inside their homes or not able to get home. Then you go out a little bit further from that with perspective, and you've got a number of people that use this Coldwater Canyon to go back and forth northbound and southbound. We've had the PCH closed, obviously, after the Palisades fire for quite some time. This is a way that people try to avoid the traffic on the 101 and the 405 as you try to go over the hill from the valley or get over the hill from the west side. So this is now shut down, this area, for a very big chunk of time. So the roadway is going to be impacted throughout Los Angeles. We are showing you on the right-hand side of your screen again just the initial pursuit of this vehicle. You see that stop stick there. that officers tried to use. It was successful. They were able to throw out those strips, and the tires eventually did, as you see there, start deflating. That's a very heavy vehicle, so as it continues to drive, it's easier to deflate. At this point, you see that pit maneuver. We thought maybe it was coming to an end. Nope, starts kind of just creeping along again. You see that other, though, innocent driver on the right there having to pull over because officers didn't know what was going to happen. Extremely narrow roadway in this area. If you go too fast, you can get caught in some pretty tricky situations. Now you see the truck. This is where it finally did start to come to an end. You see that officer making another pit maneuver, that female officer get out of the vehicle and draw their weapon. The female driver of the truck continues to go up into the hedge, and it just continued like this, where she thought she was going to be able to back up. You see the tires spinning there as well. And as Mark said, this was initially a misdemeanor call. Based on what you just witnessed and all of this, seeing the very end of this pursuit, especially with backing up into those police vehicles, she's now facing many felonies. This did, of course, start as a misdemeanor hit and run in the Hollywood area. It now appears that the driver of this vehicle knew the victim within the other vehicle of that hit and run. This is also an unreported stolen vehicle. So officers had a call and you see the beanbag go through the back window there, breaks the back window. Then you start seeing her. This is the only time in this whole pursuit we saw her. Somewhat of a pink shirt, I guess it is. I said purple earlier, pinkish purple. But she gets out of the vehicle. She says something to officers and quickly gets back in, seems to kind of punch the steering wheel. And then we have not seen much of her since then. As you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, the live picture right now, you can see where there's some broken glass and other things. Along with that vehicle, there appears to be some type of piece of paper or sticker in the front window. But other than that, not much movement. And this is at Coldwater Canyon and Clawson Place along Coldwater Canyon going north and southbound. And of course, this is going to be closed. If you're leaving the house soon and you do need to get back and forth, and just know that this is happening, you're probably going to need some extra time. Mark, you have new information? Yeah,
so what we're getting now is actually at this pursuit, or I should say where the hit and run happened in Hollywood. It appears that the driver of this silver Toyota Tacoma that's here in the standoff, during the commission of this hit and run, may have actually knocked a hydrant over, causing a geyser. So there was actually that collision as well. It's unclear if that was involved as part of this hit and run. Very likely it is, but certainly the intersection there right by the Pantages Theater on Hollywood, it has a geyser that LAFD firefighters had to deal with. I actually have some video of that. I'm trying to edit it as fast as I can to show it to you here and get you the raw video. But in addition to being in a hit and run collision, apparently there was also a fire hydrant that was knocked over as well, causing a geyser. That would make sense
when you look at the front end damage of the vehicle, because it was kind of an odd shape that if it ended up, it makes sense to me that it would have maybe hit a fire hydrant pretty forcefully there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so that's where we're at with this.
That's where we're at. Thank you to our viewers on CBS Channel 2. Now head over to our streaming channel. All right, you are now on KCAL News. We have switched over here. You're watching us on streaming. Thank you for joining us at 11:30 this morning. This is now a pursuit that has been going on for about 2 hours if you're just joining us. It started around 9:30 this morning in the Hollywood area, where we've just learned that the vehicle that you see here that has been detained by police within that, between police cars and the hedge. The driver of that vehicle is still in that vehicle. This vehicle apparently was involved in a misdemeanor hit and run in Hollywood, where we just learned it wasn't just a potential car that this driver hit, but also a fire hydrant. And that makes sense when you look at the front end damage to this vehicle. So this vehicle then takes off from the Hollywood area, goes over the hill into the valley. Police try to pull her over at one point in time. She initially does get pulled over, as our Mark Lou has been saying. He could hear the initial call. He heard some yelling, it sounds like, from the suspect herself while that initial call came in. But she quickly then took off. I say quickly took off, but then very slowly entered this pursuit. Mark, are we learning new details?
Yeah, so I can tell you, if you come out to my screen, I can actually show you some video of where this hit and run actually happened. This is that intersection right there by the Pantages Theater in Hollywood. I think this is Hollywood and Vine, I believe.
I think you're right.
That geyser, the LAPD now believes is possibly associated with this hit and run in some way. This was shot just after by a citizen who was a civilian that was passing by, who shot this and uploaded it. And LAPD is now trying to work out and figure out this happened at roughly the exact same time, the exact same place as this hit and run. So this geyser here, LA City Fire, had to turn off, which they do often in Southern California. But yeah, that appears to be a component of this. And as you had mentioned, we saw the front of that Toyota Tacoma has been banged in. Essentially, that could have been the fire hydrant. You can see it right there, down there on the ground next to that LA City Fire SUV. Knocked completely off of the sidewalk, and that could be the damage that we see there. Now, I don't know about the other vehicle that was involved or the victim that stayed behind who is communicating with LAPD, but yeah, going back out there, these are live pictures from Skycal here on Coldwater Canyon, south of Ventura. This is on the northern part of the Hollywood Hills. Now, as you had mentioned, been closed for the better part of 90, maybe an hour, 45 minutes. Because this driver refuses to not only get out of the pickup truck or communicate with LAPD at all about her intentions and or why she ran from police, but they just want to bring this to a close. Now, we apologize for the signal from Skycal. We may be switching mountaintops here. This is a pretty mountainous region. What you're seeing there on the right-hand side of your screen, this is video from earlier when LAPD did this spike strip that got a good hit on one, possibly two tires. Ultimately, those front tires on that Toyota Tacoma were deflated.
Mark, I just want to point out, too, that's where you can really see the front end damage to the truck.
Yeah, that's definitely could have been caused by a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
Clearly, that looks exactly like what a fire hydrant
size
would do.
And and I mean, a fire hydrant is heavy. It would do that much damage, right, to the front end of the vehicle.
Yeah, and that also shows that there was a significant amount of speed involved in this. That collision certainly dented, the front end of that Toyota. And you can see really how those spike strips damaged those tires. This driver ran them all the way until they were 100% flat and just fallen off the rims. Now, this is the very dangerous part of the pursuit where that driver appeared to back into LAPD patrol officers, then pulled forward into that hedge and then backed up again. And then while they couldn't back up anymore, they gunned it on the gas and spun the wheels. This is technically assault on a police officer. That could be another felony that they're going to put on this driver. And Jamie, I also want to mention these houses that you see right there. There's a woman that tried to exit the house, and LAPD said, go back inside. And I heard on the scanner, she said, I just want to leave. And they said, no. It is too dangerous for you to come out of this house right now.
They're like,
please
me
go
too,
back
lady,
inside.
me too. But
yeah,
you need to stay
everybody
in
wants
there.
to leave, exactly. But the safest place right now is inside the home. She locked her doors and windows, so she is safe. She may have, I also heard some radio traffic that she may have exited out the back of her house into one of her neighbor's yards and may have exited that way. So again, neighbors helping neighbors here in this situation. And this is that moment, Jamie, that we saw that driver, the only time we have seen this driver in the entire 90 minutes of this pursuit come out. And I believe based on LAPD's attitude when they saw her, I believe that was the first time they were seeing her too, because during the entire course of the pursuit, over the radio traffic, I did not hear a single description of the driver, male, female, age, clothing. So I don't think LAPD had an idea of who that was in there either.
Which is interesting because usually we do get some type of description as the pursuit is going along. We hear it's a man, we hear it's a woman, we hear there's potentially a passenger. You start getting pieces of information in these pursuits as you get better pictures from up above and on the ground. Sometimes people know the vehicle or know kind of what's happening and report information. But yeah, you're right. This entire time, I think all of us were surprised just because, and we the majority of these types of incidents, it's usually a man who gets out of the car or truck. Lots of female passengers I've seen over the years with men. But this is one of a few that I've seen where it's a woman who exited, and everybody seemed to be a little surprised.
They did. They
by
looked.
that.
LAPD officers actually took a step back and looked at each other. There's a very brief moment where all the officers sort of looked at each other, and then they looked at their sergeant with like, well, what do we do? And this is something that they're dealing with in real time. These are live pictures now. We have our signal back from Skycal. Thanks for bearing with us. That they deal with in real time. LAPD officers, they train for this. They have to make split-second decisions. And their primary goal is the safety of everybody involved. But even LAPD officers, they can be surprised. Things that get thrown at them, literally and figuratively, at the ends of pursuits that they have to deal with at a moment's notice. And I believe that now one of the things that it was moments after that driver got out, and whatever she said to LAPD, it was after that I heard them call for the MEU unit, which is the mental evaluation unit. They may have arrived on scene. I did some research into that. They have both civilians and officers in the MEU. Some of them they call them clinicians, civilian clinicians. So these could be people that are trained in psychology or psychiatry or how to deal with people that are experiencing mental health episodes. And then officers who are also trained in some tactics on how to de-escalate the situation without the use of violence or firearms or any other sort of less lethal in order to help bring a situation involving someone who's experiencing a mental health episode to a close safely and quickly for everyone that's involved.
It will be interesting, though, to watch kind of how they end up approaching this vehicle when that mental health evaluation unit gets on scene, because she has not come out of the vehicle, doesn't seem to be interested in talking to anyone at this point in time. So they'll have to be very careful in how they actually do communicate with this person, the suspect. You can see there are still guns drawn by a number of officers. They've moved, though, Mark, I've noticed, a little bit further back with those weapons.
They have. They've taken up different positions. That may have been the door opening, only for the second time. That looked very briefly like that door opened. So we have seen officers make a move to the driver's side. There are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, perhaps 6 officers over behind what they call it, Shop 975. That's the number on top of that vehicle. They're now behind Unit 975, which is a North Hollywood Division unit. It's fresh on the scene. They are now perhaps in a position to get a better look at that driver or perhaps communicate with that driver. These may be officers from the MEU that's down there. I'm not sure. I haven't heard an update on their efforts to get those MEU officers or clinicians to the scene. But this is certainly a more agreeable position for communication on the driver's side.
Well, when she does kind of open the door, that is what we typically see. Getting out, trying to plead your case, maybe having some other erratic behavior, maybe try to run, get on the ground, just allow them to arrest you, type thing. But she has not had any communication. She's just been sitting there for so long. I think just the door opening would maybe give officers a little bit of hope that she would have some type of communication with them.
Yeah, that door opening is a small victory for anyone trying to communicate. At least that means that driver is awake and alert and aware of the LAPD at this point, because the windows are so tinted and there's been so few communication. It's unclear if that driver, what they're doing in there. The back windows are tinted as well. And so it's hard for officers to judge what's going to come next. Many times we hear the air unit saying drivers moving around, drivers reaching under their seat, drivers moving to the back. We get none of that traffic here from the air unit because they can't see in there either. So this is a problem for everyone, and it certainly ratchets up the tension at a standoff like this, not having eyes on what the suspect is doing. But again, there has been no discussion of the suspect being armed in any way. We haven't heard anything like that. So that's at least a component that is allowing LAPD to behave in a certain way. There's a little less danger in that regard, but you never know. They could be surprised. They have to prepare for the possibility that the suspect may be armed in some way.
And that's the difficult part in these situations, is that we now see officers moving closer to the vehicle. And now we've cut to a house.
It's not clear why Chopper is now looking at this home here.
Could they be taking action here potentially?
Okay. Yeah. LAPD. Chopper was I did actually hear something. LAPD was talking about that home. They may have been using it as a landmark because it's difficult to get in.
Sure.
And they're trying to get another air unit in, and also where this is happening. But this is tape on the right-hand side, video from the right-hand side. On the left-hand side of your screen, the driver still remains inside that silver Toyota Tacoma.
I know it's a blurry picture of her, but if people do recognize her, you know, it's always helpful to call and say what you know about this person, because it does help police kind of maybe have a timeline of events that have happened in this woman's life personally, or can give them some pieces of information that will allow them to kind of come to a conclusion about what's happening here, so that they can take some type of action. You know, we did showing the home. Interesting, it could be a landmark, but also I'm thinking about the woman who came out wanting to leave. I mean, you have to imagine there's a level of not only frustration that this neighborhood is now completely shut off in terms of getting in and out, but also some fear. This is such an unusual situation to be in, because not only do officers not know what she's capable of or what could happen, but if this is your house, I guess I wouldn't want to be there either.
Yeah, right. You certainly have an entire neighborhood that's now stuck, and this is alarming for anyone who lives here to see officers with their guns drawn. And the extended amount of time that these officers have been here just increases the anxiety for everyone involved.
Definitely.
Is I'm sure they want to know, how is this, am I in danger? The officers, the best they can do for those unfortunate people that are right here on the right side of your screen in those homes is tell them, stay inside. You don't want civilians running through what is potentially the line of fire of LAPD officers. And you don't know how the suspect would react to seeing people coming out of homes, or the suspect might attempt to go into a home if the door is open.
Right.
So this is all, you have to sort of freeze in place in a situation like this. And you try and place yourself into the position of these homeowners or the people that are even stuck in their cars on Coldwater. Is what do you do now? It's when you have no way out that you can get very frustrated, and the patience, everyone, I'm sure the LAPD appreciates the patience of the civilians involved here as they try to bring this to an end. And as I talked a little bit before about the clock ticking here on closing a major thoroughfare like Coldwater Canyon on a Friday afternoon in Los Angeles, it just begins to disrupt traffic all over the city. You're going to feel it in the Valley. You're going to feel it in Hollywood. As this major thoroughfare across the Hollywood Hills is closed for what is going to be at least another hour. Even if this resolves, they've got to get this car towed out of there. They've got the LAPD get them out of there. They have to check out everybody involved, if this person is injured or not. So a real nightmare for traffic. And unfortunately, someone somewhere is watching their silver pickup truck involved in this pursuit here, because again, this is an unreported stolen. The owner is not the one driving this car. So there's also some very unhappy Toyota Tacoma owner out there watching this, saying already the tires are flat, the window is broken, and the front is banged in.
Yeah, I mean, what a frustrating situation all around for so many people. You think about this happened in Hollywood. It was a misdemeanor hit and run, but it sounds like the victim may know this woman, and we're not sure of the relationship of that. But so you have a traffic incident that also hits a fire hydrant. So you've got that scene that you got to mop up and take care of. The pursuit happens. You end up having traffic difficulties there, and now this is shut down along Coldwater Canyon. So anybody trying to go over the hill either direction, you don't have this be your route today. Because as Mark said, this is going to be quite some time. But it's also a frustration, I'm sure, to people on other roadways who now can't use this as kind of a bypass, one direction or the other. It's interesting that we still have not. She opened that door so briefly, just about 5-10 minutes ago, and now is just back hunkered down. And in these situations, you end up having to kind of read the body language of people. And you see now, it seems like the officers who had all quickly moved to the police cruiser that is on the driver's side are now just sitting there again, waiting. So it is little glimmers of hope, of communication potentially when the suspect does open the door, but now everyone just kind of still in wait and see mode as to what is taking place. Do we know yet if the mental health evaluation unit is on scene yet?
We don't. There's been very little communication on the radio now, very likely because everyone that's involved in this pursuit, command staff, officers on the ground, they're all communicating verbally without using the radio down there. So that's probably the quickest and easiest way for them to communicate. The air unit doesn't have a tremendous amount of work to do right now other than to keep their eyes on this, because it's a little bit static now in the sense that there's not a lot of motion from either the driver or the vehicle involved. They have their officers from North Hollywood and Hollywood Division set up for traffic breaks to get people around. So this is an observational moment now here for the air unit and the units on the ground. And one of the things that you had touched on with this driver is the unpredictability of the driver. This driver went through 2 spike strips, resisted attempts to stop during a pit maneuver, got out, yelled at officers, and came back in, and now is refusing to communicate. So officers don't have that typical amount of data to deal with, where at least ostensibly, if you had an aggressive driver who was yelling at the LAPD, you would have eyes on that driver. You could see what they were doing. You could communicate with them, even if they were yelling back, sometimes perhaps nonsensical things or attempts to plead their case. Don't arrest me, whatever they may be saying. In this particular case, this driver is silent. There's no communication, and we can't see inside the cab because of the heavy tint on this truck. So there's not a lot for LAPD officers to do until ostensibly, I would say, a commander somewhere decides that they need to make a move on this truck, the safety. They've gone through the checklist of how and when it would be safe to approach this vehicle, which they may do. They have officers that specialize in this. Certainly Metropolitan SWAT officers are excellent. They're trained in breaching windows, doors, both in homes and vehicles. So if that's what they want to do, we could see a call up of the Metropolitan units from downtown, the SWAT units, to get here. But then they would be coming from downtown LA on a Friday, which is just another delay in time.
Especially to this location.
Yes.
I don't even know. Oh, that's trouble.
Yeah.
Looking at the picture, I'm struck by the fact that we had so many officers at each of those 3 vehicles you see on your screen. There were so many officers standing around those vehicles and behind those vehicles. And now it seems the officers have really backed away. It makes me wonder if there's some thinking that maybe if they back up, that maybe she will get out. Maybe she was fearful with all of them right on top of her, so let's kind of back out a little bit and see kind of, maybe take a different tactic here. You can see other officers now walking further down the roadway as well. There were just so many officers standing around with the beanbag gun and the other, help me, with the hard, non-lethal foam thing.
The foam bullets. Just getting some new information from my colleagues at the assignment desk. So LAPD may have potentially identified this woman and is speaking with someone who may know her. They won't say if that's a family member or a friend or whatever, but this person that knows this driver has indicated to LAPD that this driver has had a past history of mental health episodes. So this is not something that is ostensibly very new for this driver to experience, but they are communicating the nature of these mental health episodes to LAPD, which is going to be very valuable to them in dealing with this person. It is they have some specific information about this driver and what they have gone through in the past. So that's not information that LAPD would share with us, but it's certainly they are getting a good indication of what they may deal with. And any bit of data, it's the state of mind and what this driver may be going through at this moment is going to help that MEU unit, that mental evaluation unit, deal with this.
Is there a possibility too, if they're in touch with the family member, that they try to use the family member as a bridge to the suspect?
That's possible. And again, this person that sensibly knows this driver, it's unclear if it's a family member or a friend. It's just someone who has some knowledge of this driver. LAPD didn't want to share that with us again because of the sensitivity of mental health and how that works. This person is at least giving the LAPD some valuable information that certainly will be used in dealing with this driver, hopefully to bring it to an end in a peaceful way.
Yeah, I mean, we're just sitting, watching and waiting. So every new piece of information I think we get to fully understand what is transpiring is important information. Another piece of the puzzle as to what is going on here. We continue to just watch as these officers are standing and watching and waiting themselves. The right-hand side of your screen, if you're just joining us, that is the Toyota Tacoma pickup truck getting running over stop sticks there during the pursuit that took place. Now, this driver started in Hollywood. Ended up in a misdemeanor hit and run near Hollywood and Vine. There was a fire hydrant that was hit. There was a geyser of water that police think was connected to this vehicle. You can see the front end damage pretty good in this picture right here from overhead. So, but you see those stop sticks really did do their job in terms of puncturing those tires as the vehicle continued to try to get away from police. The tires start coming off of the rims there, but that didn't stop her either. This pit maneuver wasn't going to stop her either. It took two LAPD vehicles there, you see, to kind of wedge that car between the hedge and their vehicles. And this did start as a misdemeanor hit and run. Now this driver is likely to face many, many felonies because of the actions of then trying to back up into the officer's vehicle. That's and then you see there was quickly weapons drawn to see if they would have to use some type of force. There was beanbags used to shoot out the back window. A lot of times, too, when that happens, the drivers realize the seriousness of the situation and get out. She didn't for a very long period of time, which may also indicate where her mental health is at, because I know myself, if I was sitting in that car and all of a sudden the back window exploded, I would be getting out. But it took her quite a while to kind of get out. She says something. She kind of moves her hands around and she gets back in the vehicle. The only good thing I take away from when she got out is she doesn't appear to have a weapon. We don't know if she made any type of threat, but she didn't get out with some type of gun or knife or something to threaten the police. But she clearly did say something that then triggered this mental evaluation team to be called to now the scene. And that's where we sit right now. This is in the Hollywood Hills, the North Hollywood Hills area along Coldwater Canyon. The road is shut down in the northbound and southbound lane, so you are not going to be using that as a thoroughfare today. It's between Westlake, Harvard Westlake, and Mulholland along Coldwater. So that's a huge stretch of Coldwater to shut down for more than 2 hours now.
Yeah, and also you mentioned Harvard Westlake. I'm just getting information from the LAPD. That school's on lockdown. This is close enough to the school.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, that is a major high school. It's right on Coldwater, south of Ventura.
Yes. And
that's actually where they're turning cars around. So you're not going to get past Harvard Westlake. But they didn't say the school is not in any danger in the sense that that they believe that this driver is connected with the school or made any attempts to get to the school. It's just close enough. And there are students involved that they have locked the school down. It's not evacuated. Right. It's a standard LAUSD school lockdown where classes will continue, but no one is allowed to leave the classroom.
Well, I think it makes sense to me, too. If they're turning cars around at that place and time, you don't want students going to get lunch or getting in and out. So it's better to just lock the school down, keep everybody inside.
Yeah,
and
you make a good point. This is around lunchtime, and I'm not sure if that campus allows people to leave, the students to leave for lunch, but this would be a time where they would not be allowed off the campus due to this situation. And I'm hitting a little bit more radio traffic. Honestly, Jamie, most of the traffic from the air unit and the crews on the ground is traffic control going on right now.
Imagine.
That is become a problem because of the nature of the Hollywood Hills. They are asking for even more units that have already been there for 90 minutes to assist with getting drivers to where they need to go. And it's slow. Drivers are upset. Obviously, it's understandable, but they're asking for patience as they try to navigate people around. It just shows how important Coldwater Canyon is.
It is. Absolutely.
When you close something like this, it has ripple effects.
I mean, I know firsthand because I occasionally, you look at your GPS before you leave the valley if you live on the west side and you go, it's going to take me an hour on the 405. Well, maybe I'll try going over the canyon, or maybe I'll take Sepulveda. So it is something, and I know several other people who, do the same thing. And that's been a frustration really for these neighborhoods too, is that a lot of us do that. There's been a huge increase in traffic along those roadways as we try to find alternate routes to take. But you have to imagine it's also now having an impact on those other roadways like the 405 and Sepulveda and some of the other canyon roads there. But you think that's a big chunk, Mulholland to Harvard Westlake.
Harvard Westlake. That's the entire north side of the Hollywood Hills along Coldwater.
I know. So if you have any plans, you might want to cancel, reschedule, figure out a different day to do it. Because as you indicated, even if this ends up clearing up. Oh, now we're seeing the traffic. And it looks like the SWAT
metro
team.
units
Yes.
I'm talking about. They arrived from various, probably downtown. There's that Bearcat, 2 Bearcats.
Wow.
3. That looks like 3 Bearcats and multiple other specialized units from the LAPD. So this is where LAPD has triggered the clock, where they say we cannot let this go on. We are going to end this. We want to end this with the peaceful surrender of the driver, but these are the officers that are trained with breaching and entering vehicles and buildings. This is their specialty. This is what they train for. They have extra tools that are designed to do this. And what we are probably going to see, Jamie, is the removal of those LAPD Hollywood SUVs and the replacement of those vehicles with these armored units. They're going to go right up against this truck, probably on both sides.
It makes sense, right? Because we noticed the officers retreating, some of them going back to their cars even, instead of being right on top of that car. So we knew something would be happening. So to now see this, I am very impressed by their drive time from downtown Los Angeles to this somewhat narrow and remote part of the roadway of Coldwater Canyon. You see them go through the
they're not going to stop.
Crime scene. They've got a mission and they are on their way. But this also just speaks to, you see there's so many officers up and down this roadway, and just how much of the roadway is shut down at this point in time. You saw the traffic there too all stop to allow these vehicles to make their way in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And now they are approaching this vehicle here and they are stopped. The SWAT commander there certainly is going to communicate with the commander on the ground here to set up this. We're going to see here a transition and a handover of authority to where this will be a SWAT jurisdiction operation here. They are going to take command. You can see they're ready, loaded for bear here, body armor and tactical gear. They will also carry their equipment with them that they need. There will be certainly an array of less than lethal type of equipment that they're going to have. I was discussing earlier, they even have a long pole. It's about 20 feet long that they can attach a device at the end that could spray either pepper spray or tear gas, and they can use it to break right through the window of that truck and just drop that tear gas or pepper spray directly into the cabin. Of course, that's dangerous. They usually do that from behind a barrier, usually the Bearcat that you see there, armored from end to end. But yeah, this is now going to change. They've escalated this. This is a definite change in stance by the LAPD, as the clock has been ticking far too long to let this driver continue to sit here and block a major thoroughfare in Southern California.
Well, and as you said, there are both civilians and uniformed mental evaluation unit personnel. So we don't know. Maybe one of the officers that we've been seeing was part of the mental evaluation team, tried to have some conversations, yelled, we can't hear what's happening right now directly on the scene. So you don't know what's transpired, but definitely, as you said, escalating this situation as we see. I also have to wonder if she is under distress in terms of her mental health. What psychologically it does to then see SWAT members show up, and in some ways you wonder if just them being on scene could allow her to get out of realizing the severity of the situation, that this isn't it's not going away. It's you can't magically make it disappear, and now you have SWAT officers on scene. It looks like they're getting ready, as you said, to make the handover between the two. Not moving extremely swiftly here, which is also an indicator that they want to take their time to make sure that they get the situation right, as you said, in terms of some of the tools and tactics that they may end up having to use.
Yeah, you brought up a very interesting point. Clearly, these Bearcat units are in a direct line of sight with the driver, and you never want to be in the unfortunate position of staring down the SWAT team of the LAPD, one of those professional law enforcement agencies in the world, and their very powerful Bearcat units. That is enough to make suspects surrender when you know this elite team unfortunately has, you as the subject of their efforts for the afternoon. So there is clearly no way for this driver to escape, and hopefully the sight of these Bearcats will indicate to this driver the severity of the situation that they are in and that there is still time to surrender peacefully. There is always time to surrender peacefully. LAPD would want this to end with a simple set of handcuffs and a walk under your own power back to a patrol car. That's how it should end, and LAPD will continue to offer that to that driver. The last thing they want to do is use those SWAT officers to take this person out forcefully out of the car.
Yeah, I mean, this is what makes it a tricky situation, right? Because it sounds like there has been contact with someone this driver knows who has indicated that there has been some mental health issues in the past. You don't know, sometimes with people, their mental health issues present in kind of the same way, or sometimes they escalate. And in this case, there's the potential that maybe something escalated here, and then you don't know what the person is capable of. It looks like, as Skycal's kind of zooming in there, it's showing, it was showing inside the vehicle, it looked like there was some type of blue light. Not sure if that's a light within the car.
The photographer at Skycal may have spotted something that we can't exactly see up there. I'm listening a little bit to the communications with the desk. But yeah, it seems that the focus is on what officers can see through that broken window there. That was the done by the beanbag round a little bit earlier. And then there's that, looks like a shadow on the ground. If it's some kind of a stick or a rod, I'm not sure where that came from. But SWAT continues to position themselves just outside of the driver's side of this pickup truck as this pursuit now stretches into its second hour here in Coldwater Canyon and Clawson Place in Studio City area on the north side of the Hollywood Hills.
Yes, and you are watching KCAL News at noon as we continue to follow this breaking news, a police pursuit that began around 9:30 this morning when a reported stolen truck, that silver Toyota Tacoma, crashed into a fire hydrant, leading to a geyser there. And then that driver, which we know now is a female behind the wheel, drove at very slow speeds along Coldwater there. Officers were able to use 2 spike strips that you can see right there. That driver going over that spike strip, 2 of those were actually used, and the tires were flattened. Soon after this, officers, you're seeing it right here, attempted to do a pit maneuver, which didn't work quite as well because of the slow speed of this truck. The truck stopped temporarily and then picked back up, continuing along Coldwater, but at a very slow rate of speed there. And you can see that truck almost wobbling because of those flat tires. You can see the tires just coming off of the rims. That driver then pulled up against this sidewalk area and that hedge. Police pinned that truck in, pushed the truck a little bit. It is then wedged between that hedge and those cruisers. At some point, we saw that driver put the truck in reverse. We could see the tires spinning in reverse, but the truck was not moving as it was pinned. And that waiting game began, and it has been going on since a little after 10 o'clock this morning. We are now into the second hour of this. We watched as police used non-lethal firearms there, firing beanbags into the back window. And at one point, we saw the driver hop out of the door there, flailing her arms, talking to officers, jumping right back in. And now, Mark, Lou, we have seen SWAT officers arrive.
This is a significant change in the stance of the LAPD as they attempt to deal with this driver. We know that the MEU, or the LAPD's Mental Evaluation Unit, was called to the scene to attempt to deal with this driver, to negotiate. They're a specialized team within the LAPD that involves both civilians, clinically trained in dealing with mental health, and officers trained with de-escalation tactics to try and bring situations involving someone experiencing a mental health episode, bring that situation to an end without violence. But so far, their efforts have been unsuccessful, and this driver remains inside of this pickup truck. Not only have they remained inside there, they have refused to communicate with LAPD except for 2 brief moments when the door opened and that driver got out very quickly and then got back in. So LAPD has now called in SWAT officers. officers. They arrived at the scene just a short time ago. We see 2 Bearcats, possibly a 3rd armored vehicle as well there, and multiple other black SUVs from Metropolitan Division. They are there and on scene. There will be a transfer of authority. This will now become a SWAT operation here. As you see, that tactical officer down there in that ballistic gear that are now at the ready. There will, of course, always be offers to this driver to surrender peacefully, but these are the officers in the LAPD that are specifically trained to breach vehicles and remove suspects using force. They don't want to use any sort of lethal force to do this, but they certainly have brought that to this scene in case it is needed. So they have many tools at their disposal, many tactics at their disposal to do this. But unfortunately, all of them require a certain amount of danger to officers as they have to approach that truck in order to get that driver out. However, they will continue to try to give commands to that driver to get that person to surrender. A little bit of information, Amy, that we have learned. We are seeing some movement here. It looks like this is probably the moment when LAPD officers from Hollywood Division, yes, are getting out of the way. These were the officers involved in the pursuit from Hollywood and North Hollywood Division. They are moving their units out of the way so that we can see these Bearcats now take up position. These very heavily armored, bulletproof vehicles are going to position themselves to, A, prevent this driver from leaving, and B, provide a barrier by which officers can approach and perhaps interact in a little more safer way with that driver. But this is what we've seen before with standoffs, Amy.
And Mark, you were hearing that they do know who this person is now, and family members or friends have talked to them about this woman and her mental state?
Yeah, it's a very small amount of information, but LAPD appears to have reached someone who knows this woman. It appears they have been able to successfully identify her. And a component of that is that this person, we don't know if it's a friend or a family member. Now we see that armored unit going right up against the tail of that pickup. It's not going anywhere now. But this person that knows this driver says that this driver has had a history of mental health episodes before and has communicated to the LAPD the type and nature of these mental health issues, which is going to be very valuable in dealing with this person. Hopefully that provides an insight into the kinds of things that are going through this driver, or this driver is going through right now. So that will be of assistance. But now you can see the standard tactic used by the SWAT team to surround this driver. These armored cars are going to stay here until this driver surrenders, and they provide a path to access that passenger side of that truck in case they want to deliver any sort of incapacitating agent like tear gas or pepper spray in there, and that may be some of the tools that SWAT deploys.
Yeah, and Mark, we don't see a lot of this happening like this, in which they completely surround this vehicle. Oftentimes we'll see it on one side, but they're not always able to get around a vehicle like this. But they have really got this pickup truck, I mean, really wedged in there now. This truck is definitely not going anywhere, and we can actually see that truck moving. We've seen that a couple of times now where they have really just tried to get as close to this truck as possible. I mean, there is just no room for anyone to really get out of this. We see them even repositioning that third truck so that it can get even closer, which I don't know, part of that tactic is so that the doors can't even open, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, this is, they will approach this in different ways based on what the commander feels is appropriate here. There is certainly a way for this driver to get out, perhaps through the passenger side, or at least to communicate with SWAT that they want to surrender. But this would normally be enough for someone to understand that they really have no way out except surrender at this point. To have your vehicle surrounded by 3 armored cars, 3 armored vehicles like this, has got to communicate to the driver that they will be arrested in short order here. So hopefully that this image alone is enough for them to understand that it's going to come to an end fairly shortly here. But SWAT is doing exactly what they are trained to do. This is a tactic that they use, both for the safety of the officers involved and it may be hard to understand, for the safety of the driver. It's going to be hard for this driver to now get out and run, possibly injure themselves or other civilians. But you can see they're actually, LAPD is very deliberate in their positioning of these armored vehicles for whatever tactic they expect to come next. And that's going to be up to the commander on the ground and the commander in the air to communicate and see what is the best way to approach this vehicle. Because it sounds like
we even see them coming out of the top of that rear armored vehicle there, Mark.
There is a cupola there that officers can pop up through. There's a slit with which they can see through that. That's an armored bulletproof plate that officer is looking through. And these officers, they are preparing to forcibly remove this driver if necessary. And unfortunate that it has come to this, because this driver has had multiple opportunities to surrender so far this afternoon.
Definitely an intimidating stance there all around this truck. Really very clear now that this driver has nowhere to go and is best just to surrender. But we have been following this now for over 2 hours, and this driver did hop out at one point, said something to officers, and it was after that moment that those officers then called in the MEU, the Mental Evaluation Unit, and at this point, SWAT has now come in and has surrounded this pickup truck that we do know was reported stolen, was involved in a minor incident, which we now know was hitting a hydrant, causing that geyser. But we're watching as more of that personnel gets out of those armored units there.
Yeah, and you know, Amy, I've just noticed something that I don't think that I certainly had not noticed before, but the back window of that pickup is also shattered. It appears that perhaps a beanbag round may have gone through that as well. Now, what you're looking at there, that's one of the, I believe that's a 40 millimeter foam round, less than lethal weapon. You see how large those rounds are? That SWAT officer, he's pulling them out. They're huge. They're about the size of baseballs, made of a very strong foam rubber that's designed to strike somewhere on the suspect. It cause a tremendous amount of pain, but no permanent or lasting damage. It can break ribs, but it is designed to not hit with such force that it could cause lethal injuries. That's why they call it less than lethal. However, a strike on the head is certainly not something that they would ever want, as that could cause some serious brain injuries. But officers are trained on how to use it to make sure that they aim for something lower on the extremities of the body in order to hit that suspect. And it causes a tremendous amount of pain. And many suspects, if they're struck by one of those foam rounds, they surrender immediately. And
you know, Mark, oftentimes we've seen situations like this where they actually fire in some type of a smoking device to where they, in a matter of words, smoke out that suspect because there's so much smoke in the vehicle that the person, you know, is coughing and comes out at that point. But, you know, at this point, we're waiting to see exactly how they are going to attempt to get this person out.
Yeah, so they are in a position that they could use several things. You see, this is an excellent tactic that they have used here. They have a path in to the passenger side of this truck, which would make it hard if the driver had a weapon. It would be more difficult for the driver to aim that weapon or to see approaching officers. And that path is protected by armored vehicles on the back and on the right. They're able to approach. They may deliver into that cabin some kind of pepper spray or tear gas. As you had mentioned, they certainly carry it with them in their armored vehicles. They also have an exit route for that driver. This allows that driver to get out from the passenger side. Those officers protected on the left and the right. You can see those officers there in full tactical ballistic gear with the long rifles there aimed. It's difficult for them to see probably through those heavily tinted windows. So that's going to be troubling for them. You can see now an officer with a megaphone there is definitely telling that driver, we have you, you know, boxed in. We need you to surrender, comply now, and we can end this peacefully.
And we do hope that that's what this person does. This woman will actually get out of this vehicle peacefully at this point. But it has been over 2 hours that she has been sitting in this truck. And it is very clear to everyone else that, you know, there is no way that she's going to get out of this situation without being taken into custody. And you just hope that she will comply at this point. All of these officers want this to end peacefully. And with this woman not being harmed in any way, they have been advised that she is having some type of mental hardship at this point, and they are trying to, they tried for so long to wait this out, but, at this point, this is a busy stretch of roadway, Coldwater Canyon, that has been closed for hours now. The people that live in the home where this is all happening, also stuck in their home, cannot leave. And so it's a really tough situation, and everyone wants it to end peacefully.
Yeah, you spoke about the homeowner, the alarming, to say the least, to see 3 of the largest heavily armored vehicles that the LAPD has showing up on your driveway is certainly not something that you expected to see when you woke up on a Friday morning, but this is where we're at with this. So LAPD SWAT officers now giving some time for that driver to react to getting the commands directly from that SWAT officer down there on the ground. You can see they are ready to go with any sort of attempt to apprehend this person should they get out, hopefully peacefully. That lead officer there with that long rifle is never going to take his eyes off the back of that truck. He certainly has his weapon at the ready, good trigger discipline there as well. This officer in the cupola up there also keeping an eye from above as he's able to look through that small opening in that ballistic shield there that comes up from, he's also armed as well, as you can see. So this is, again, the clock is ticking on this driver here. They don't have too many options left except to surrender peacefully, or LAPD is going to have to use force to take them out. Now, Coldwater is still closed, and drivers are being diverted at Harvard Westlake near the north and down at Mulholland on the south, but hopefully this won't last too much longer as SWAT is preparing to make their move to finally bring this to an end.
And, so often we will see officers wait out these people for quite some time. But once SWAT arrives, as you mentioned, Mark, the clock is really ticking because they're only going to wait so long before they are able to go in and essentially pull this person out of the truck.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this has been far too long to keep Coldwater Canyon closed for this amount of time. That is certainly a component of what the LAPD commanders are thinking about. Safety is their #1 priority, always. But they have to consider the rest of the city as well and what this effect is on the neighborhood and the traffic at large on the city on a Friday afternoon. So they are going to give this suspect, this driver, every opportunity to surrender, but they will not wait forever for this. Now, what you're seeing right there is exactly the tool that I was discussing before. It has a very funny name, but it is indeed the name, and I double-checked with the LAPD. Is this really what you call this thing? And it is. It's called the bang pole, and that's because they sometimes put a flashbang on the end of that pole. And what they will use is what you saw. You see how long it is? You can see it. It goes all the way back from the back of that armored car. Yeah. That bang pole, they will attach either tear gas or a flashbang, probably not a flashbang in this particular case, probably some sort of smoke type agent. And they will use it and push it right through the window, possibly through the hole made by those beanbag rounds. And then there's a trigger-like device that allows them to drop that canister in the truck. And that's going to fill that cabin with whatever that may be. Either it's some sort of pepper spray-like device or tear gas or smoke or whatever it is. They're certainly preparing to use that, and we've seen them use it before.
Exactly, and you can see again with that megaphone, that officer again speaking to that driver, that woman, encouraging her to come out. You can see there, right there, but as you were talking about that pole there, Mark, being used, it is being put in position, given to another officer that is at a closer vantage point. But we can watch as this will probably be used at any moment now because they are giving this driver, another opportunity to come out. But without any movement happening, we haven't seen a door open again. It does not look. Oh,
that's the bang pole right there.
This
You
is
see
the
that?
bang
It's
pole.
got like a cage on the end of it. That's where they can keep either the tear gas or the pepper spray or whatever. That other smaller pole, I'm not sure what that is. That they may use that to break the window. That may be just like a long metal pole to break the window. But that, I believe, is the bang pole. I actually saw them put a canister in it. It's not in it right now. There's no canister in there right now. But that's, see how it folds up like that, and it's got almost like a claw on the end of it. That's what they're going to use They may be able to break the window with just that, but they probably won't. They'll probably break the window with something else because they don't want to damage the canister that's on the end of it. But right now there's no canister there. So it's unclear what they're doing, but they're setting up to use that.
Yes, they are definitely all in position. Again, we just see that megaphone being raised again in front of that officer who has been using it to communicate with that driver, probably encouraging her one more time to come out with her hands up and to end this now peacefully so that no one gets hurt in this. And, again, it's been going on over 2 hours. This truck, again, reported stolen. It was involved in a crash around 9:30 this morning. It was a minor incident in which the truck hit a hydrant. And then from there, this driver, this woman, led officers on a very slow speed pursuit down Coldwater. And it makes you wonder, Mark, if she was driving so slow and that she had that accident, that maybe she was having trouble driving, maneuvering this truck all along. It was not her vehicle. For all we know, she might not even have a lot of experience driving and was taking the curvy road quite slow. And accidentally, hit that hydrant on accident and just trying to get away.
Yeah, it's possible. We will not know that. We just won't know the answers to that until after this suspect has been taken into custody. But you mentioned this was slow speeds on Coldwater Canyon. That was even before the spike strips, but we know very likely that this driver may be experiencing some kind of a mental health episode. We don't know how severe that was or how that affected their perception of reality at the time. So these are all things that, of course, made it very dangerous for drivers on the road and LAPD, and continues to make it dangerous for the officers that are dealing with this right now, as this person is not operating under the normal rational faculties of someone who has complete control of their mental health. And so this is a difficult situation that is why LAPD has a mental evaluation unit, why they understood, and both them and at a national level, the Department of Justice has done research into this as the best way to deal with people experiencing these types of episodes, dealing with them, de-escalating it throughout the use of force. But unfortunately, it does not work every time, which is why the LAPD has to resort to situations like this for both their officer safety and the safety of civilians. And just clearing out a situation like this on Coldwater is to use the SWAT team who are trained in breaching and removing people from vehicles.
That's right. This woman just refusing to give up. As you mentioned, there were 2 attempts with spike strips, and then really the pit maneuver was attempted, which did stop the truck for just a moment, and then she continued on. Then once she got to this location, she was pinned in by that hedge and some cruisers that were behind this truck, yet she was still putting the truck in reverse. We could see the tires moving, but the vehicle wasn't moving. Clearly she was pinned in, but she was still attempting to get away. And then still refusing to get out of this vehicle. Very clearly, she is pinned in by these armored vehicles. She cannot get out and make a run for it, but she can get out peacefully while listening to the commands of these officers. But this woman has refused to do that. And we do know that they will only spend so much time negotiating with her before they do take action and use those bang poles and other items to either put smoke or some type of device in there that will essentially smoke her out. And, they are trying to be very patient. They want this to end peacefully. But as you've been mentioning, Mark, this is on Coldwater Canyon. This road has been closed for over 2 hours now. And eventually the people that live in that home and the neighboring homes will need to leave, and traffic will need to be able to go along Coldwater Canyon.
Yeah, we're stretching this now into the noon hour, and we all know on a Friday the traffic is only going to increase exponentially as this goes on. And there may be people who just aren't aware as you start heading up Coldwater. If you make it all the way to Mulholland, heading north out of Hollywood, you're going to be very surprised. And then you think, well, what do I do? There's already so much traffic. Yes. You're going to get caught. It's not an easy way to make a left or a right turn and get back down the hill. If you're coming southbound on Coldwater from the valley, you have a little bit better options because you're probably getting stopped just after Ventura. So you have options to turn right back into the valley, head along Ventura to wherever you need to go. Not that Ventura is any better on a Friday afternoon in the San Fernando Valley as well. But we're probably going to see a lot of increased traffic on the 405 and the 101 the
Yes.
longer this goes, because those are what people are going to attempt to take, or maybe even Laurel Canyon. This is now the approach of a black SUV here with officers probably from Metro Division as well. Not sure what this has to do, who we're going to see come out of this. We're not sure if this is a commander or perhaps someone else here who's going to assist with this, or if they're just moving to the other side of the scene. I did not hear any radio traffic about this. They may just be passing through here to get to the opposite side. Yeah, okay, so nobody got out of that LAPD vehicle. So we continue to see SWAT here in this standby situation. I still see that officer down there with that bullhorn giving commands to that driver, and now we're seeing the approach. This is going to be where they break the window with that bang pole right through there. We're seeing that. I don't see any canisters, though. That is an empty bang pole, so this is phase one, step one, break the window. The next thing they're going to do, they're going to use that to look inside the cabin there. That's going to give them a lot more intel, and if this driver continues to surrender, they may actually put a canister on the end of that bang pole.
Exactly. And so we're watching. We can see that officer with the megaphone there. It was just up again. We have to assume that he was saying more to this woman, encouraging her again to get out of this truck peacefully. Because as you've been mentioning, Mark, the next step will be adding a canister to that pole, which will then release smoke or tear gas or something that will help lead her out of that truck, because it will be very difficult for her to breathe inside that cab, despite the holes that have now been broken into that back window. Earlier when this began, we saw less than lethal rifles being used to shoot bean bags or something into the rear passenger window there. And oftentimes when that begins, people will often get out because they realize that there are no other options. But in this particular case, this woman continues to stay in that truck. It has to be very intimidating to be surrounded by these vehicles, to have that back window break open like that, and it is amazing with the ease that pole was able to just break through that glass, just shattering there inside the cab of that truck. So you would hope that something like that would be enough for this woman to get out of the truck, but we have still seen no movement, no doors opening, no windows coming down, and that woman remains inside that truck.
Yeah, I'm still listening to some radio traffic from the LAPD. They're mainly talking about the officers on the perimeter, making sure they know that the SWAT is beginning their operation to get into position and take this to the next stage of what they want to do, which is essentially take that driver into custody, either deliver some kind of an incapacitating type of gas into that truck or not. And if they do that, I can tell you in that closed environment, it is going to be extremely uncomfortable for that driver to sit in there if they release any kind of forced pepper spray or any kind of a tear gas or any other kind of, basically it's any kind of an irritant to the mucous membranes. It is virtually impossible to breathe. I can remember seeing a pursuit last year where someone did try to tough it out in there, but in order to do it, they had to stick their head out the window to breathe. Ultimately, they did surrender. It was a man who was, I believe it was down maybe in the Compton area. I can't remember exactly what it was, about a year and a half ago, that someone actually tried to tough out a situation inside of the cabin of a vehicle after tear gas had been delivered inside. It did not look pleasant at all. And if this driver does not surrender soon, they will be going through that as well. So LAPD SWAT officers continuing to talk on that bullhorn, hoping that this driver sees they mean business when they broke out the back window of this unreported stolen Toyota Tacoma. And this is going to give LAPD a little bit better eyes on what's going on in there too.
Exactly. They can get a better look inside that truck with that broken back window now completely open for them to see that person. This, again, is a vehicle with very dark tinted windows. We so often see those dark tinted windows when we're covering these pursuits, which makes it so difficult to see what's happening inside that truck right now. We don't know if she's just sitting back relaxed, if she's moving around. You just can't see any movement inside that truck. But we do see movement out there with those officers as they are continuing to work toward their plan to get her out. We see that megaphone up again. With that officer continuing to speak with this driver and everyone is in position for the next stage of this, and it is all an attempt to get her out of this truck, the stolen truck, and really to get her out unharmed and with everyone else involved in this also unharmed. We have not heard of any weapon, but again, you can never be too sure. This was not her truck. We don't know what was left in this truck by whoever does own it, but we have not seen any weapon and we have not heard about any weapon. But officers are trained to treat this person as if they are armed.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that up, Amy. LAPD officers, we did hit a little bit of radio traffic down there. Those SWAT officers, they say we are going to treat this suspect as if they are armed. They have to do that. This suspect has shown a propensity to drive in reverse, striking those patrol cars, which is assault on a police officer if they want to charge her with that. This driver went through 2 spike strips and continued to drive despite destroyed tires, and this driver also got away from the first pit maneuver. Yes. So there is certainly, you can learn the psychology of the driver is desperate in a sense to get away and is willing to engage in exceptionally dangerous behavior, and LAPD is going to consider that when dealing with this person. Now we continue to see, it looks like that SWAT officer now manipulating that bang pole. It does now look like I see a silver canister in there. So that looks like that bang pole has indeed been armed with some kind of a gas dispersal agent that we are going to see in there. It's unclear what kind SWAT is going to use at this time. They have several at their disposal, but they are getting it ready, and we may be seeing that pole delivered right into the rear window of that truck. And then we're going to see a lot of smoke coming out of that cabin.
We are, Mark, and we've also seen, I don't know if you could tell, the officer that's by the door was handed what appeared to be a mask so that they can deal with that smoke. So they were putting on what appears to be a mask there so that they will be able to deal with that smoke or gas, whatever it is that is being put into that cab. We see another officer who took off his helmet and perhaps is also putting on one of those masks so that they can actually, he's putting that one on or about to be able to endure whatever is in that canister that will be going into the truck. So they are definitely getting ready for this procedure.
These will very likely be the officers involved in the arrest team. This will be the officers that are going to have to approach and maybe handcuff that suspect. Or hopefully the suspect would come out on their own and step away from the truck, but that may not be the case. They may just sort of flop out of the car, be near close to the truck or whatever. But those officers are preparing for the likelihood of having to take this suspect into custody in the midst of that agent that they are going to disperse into that vehicle. You can see those are rubber masks that are going to be able to filter out any of that. Pepper spray could be or tear gas they're going to use. We may see all of those officers put them on because you never know what may be needed here. Those rubber masks, unfortunately, they restrict your peripheral vision, makes it hard to sometimes see what they're doing, but they train in these, so they're used to it. It's not something that all officers get training in, but certainly SWAT does. You can see there's also some weapons down there that are green in nature. That's always an indicator that that's a less than lethal weapon. I think that was a 40 millimeter round that we saw there that officer was holding, but they're certainly going to also be using real firearms as well in case this suspect displays any sort of threatening things that could be fatal or lethal in nature. But yeah, that's definitely an armed bang pole that's down there on the ground. It's just a matter of time before they use it here.
And Mark, I think I've seen it looks like at least 5 officers that have put on the mask at this point that are right in that area, maybe even a 6th there. And they all have on those protective masks. So once that canister is put into that truck, they will be protected from whatever smoke or gas that is being used. But they are ready for this. And we saw that canister now in that bang pole. There it is right there, yep. Mark. So you can see it now.
It seems like they want to use this over around to the right. So we're going to see that officer, and it's understandable because that officer is protected by sending that pole over the hood of that upper armored car they're able to just get in there and drop whatever canister they're going to use right in there. That's probably the safest way, rather than approaching on the passenger side. Yeah, you see how that pole extends?
Yes.
It can really extend. They've used this to drop it into homes through a window, but we've also seen it here now. We're going to see it. Looks like they're getting ready to do it. That officer now going to place it right in there, and they're going to drop it. And there's going to be a whole lot of something. There you go. You see it. It's being activated, forcefully expelling whatever that may be in there. That may actually be just, it appears that this particular style.
Oh, the door is already opening.
That's how fast that works, is that irritant to the mucous membranes works super fast. So it's unclear if just one exposure is going to be enough for this driver to surrender, or if they may have to do it again. Nope, looks like I see movement over there.
Yeah, the door's open.
Yeah, she's clearly feeling the effects of whatever it was in that canister.
But closing the door again, Mark.
Yeah.
The door is closed again.
That's not going to help. Once that has made contact with your mucous membranes, you are going to see an increasing amount of irritation. You can see her rubbing her eyes. That, unfortunately, makes it worse.
She closed the door again,
Yeah.
Mark. That has got to be tough to be breathing that in. And even though the back of that truck is open, the back window of the passenger side, they're also open. But to endure this with this truck closed up, even with those openings, it is a lot of smoke that she is dealing with. And to see her really kind of almost shaking from this, it's tough to see.
It is. Clearly, this person is going through a mental health episode, and the application of this agent is only certainly exacerbating her anxiety. But this relief is available through medical professionals if she surrenders, and I'm sure that the LAPD SWAT officers are communicating that to her, that there are medical professionals that are standing by that can provide that kind of eye wash that will help stem some of the effects that she's feeling here. But again, the longer that this goes on, the more discomfort this driver will be in. And this is something now that LAPD SWAT officers are going to wait for this driver to hopefully surrender when it just becomes too intense to bear these symptoms.
Yeah, we just saw that megaphone up in front of that officer who has been communicating with her. We have to assume that they were just telling her to come out, that they could help her once she got out of there, and that, they're ready for her to come out, and they are just waiting this out, and you can almost feel the pain of what she is dealing with there.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, what we're seeing here, Skycal unfortunately has to depart this scene due to fuel issues. We've been up for more than 2.5 hours. It's a short trip to Van Nuys Airport. We're going to go get that fuel right now. But Amy, we are going to continue to monitor this through radio traffic and our crew on the ground. And we will bring you the very latest if we find out how and when we find out how this suspect is taken into custody.